Record. Hey everybody, welcome to our team meeting. So today is November 30th. I'm saying the date just because we are going to be posting this on maybe our YouTube channel, or this will be available for anyone else who joins our team later to take a look at. We always have great team meetings and we'll get into that. And today our team meeting topic is going to be about going over disclosures. So we have a few disclosure packets that some of our team members gave us a synopsis on, and we're going to go through that together. So it'll be a learning training exercise that we can all share feedback with one another and see the differences of how we would advise. And then I have some suggestions on things that I've seen in other people's disclosure packets that I'll share too. So yay, welcome to our team meeting. So Liz always starts us off with a fabulous quote, and we talk about what that means to us. So Liz, go ahead, take it from the top. But first you have to take mute off.
Yes. The quote is, if you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you, by Anonymous.
I like that one. Do you want to go first and say what that means to you?
For me, I mean, it's just kind of a broad reflection of everything. I mean, I started with no residential, homes, any type of experience. And I have really learned all about the business, all about the ways that Patrice, really created a number of systems for us, and we've refined those systems and built the team. So for me, it's all been learning,
Well, and luckily you guys know me, I go real slow. So I made it easy for Liz. I give real complete directions and take my time, and I work at a slow pace, so I'm sure I was very easy to keep up with. Sorry.
Well, it's been awesome. The last 2.5 years, all this learning and then creating the systems from it. And like I said, we refine it, as Patrice learns more, as the buyer's agents share more, we get it kind of more fine-tuned. So especially this last year with COVID, it's been a lot.
And I have to say, Jen actually is the reason that this all worked out, because Jen had been working for me for years, and she was your in-between in a lot of things too. So
yes,
not that she'll ever watch the show, but we'll give her the props anyway. And you, right? But it is one of those things. You literally came in, and real estate's a whole different language. You guys know, as buyer's agents, you're working on learning the business and learning the contract. I don't know if you know, but I work really hard, and I expect everyone around me to work hard, which means that Liz has to figure out being an agent, which she's never licensed. She had no interest in any of this stuff. She literally has to learn how to work with you guys, how to run it as a business, the coaching, the training, every program that we go for, all the listings, all the staging, all of everything. And again, at the pace that I work. So good job, Liz. You definitely are a learner. And half the time I'm like, I don't know, call Jeffrey.
Well, and our clients are amazing too. Yes, we get that great support at KW from Jeffrey, and then Christy Moore is very supportive, and our clients are amazing. So, they have been very responsive with me, and just staying in communication with them has helped me through the process.
Yeah, but that's partly because you ask a lot of questions. You really do, and you dive into it, because I just leave her. And imagine when I was in Louisiana, Liz literally had to do everything. She had to do an entire job as a listing agent. She still was coaching everybody. And you were helping me prep the contracts, doing all of that stuff, prepping every house, right? We sold a house. Yep. I never even went in. I haven't been in the entire summer because I wasn't in town. So, you and Steph worked with Shelly, and I didn't do a thing.
So if I write everything down, my checklists and all my notes, I have about, I have notebooks for each of our listings, and I like to keep it and look back and see what I need to do. And if I didn't write it all down, it wouldn't all come together.
No, well, and you weren't prepared for the level of work that you do now when you first started, right? You literally had to create your own systems within the system and then learn it. So again, it just says a lot about you, and it shows how fast you can learn. Liz is running, one of the biggest teams at our office. She's literally running our entire show. We have a pretty decent, I always say we have a small team, and we do compared to some of the KW, but we have a pretty big team for what we have and for our level of business. She's got a lot that's going on. And again, I think I like that quote, because you just figure it out. Because I'm too busy to stop most of the time. So it's cool. I love it. Who wants to say something next?
I'll go.
Okay. Hi.
So Hi there. So sky's the limit about learning, and you're right. Nobody can stop you if you're willing to learn. For the past month, it has been a lot of learning for me. And I am that type of a person that I reach out because I don't want to make a mistake on the customer's end. So I have been asking, which we should all do, if things that we're not certain. And it has been, and I did mention to you, is that I learned so much in past a few weeks, which I'm, still learning. Every day is a learning that I have been licensed for many, many years because I didn't do any of the paperwork myself. So you're right. Sky's the limit, and nobody can stop us from learning. And I think we should always ask and learn and learn. And I say every day is a learning process, and every minute that I learn something new from somebody else.
It's so true. And of course, Erin, thank you. This was really kind of part of your idea. What's great about you is you are so direct about asking for what you want. It's really helping to shape us. And again, I know you and Steph just went over some disclosures, and I've done some one-on-ones with all of you, but Zareen really was the inspiration for this meeting of because she said, when you're going over it with me, let's do it where the other agents can learn. I'm like, oh my God, we need to start doing this for team meetings. Like, this is so much smarter. So it's neat. You guys will get to learn from me. In addition, I'm going to get to learn more from you guys, and you'll each get to learn from one another, which I think is brilliant. So thank you, Zareen. Your quest for learning is definitely inspiring. So thanks. And changing us as a team. Who's next?
I can go.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm always struggling with this because it's a lot of times where you're not motivated and you don't want to, and you're always trying to find excuses, and that's like learning, like you got to choose to actually do it. And if you do it, if you actually want to learn and seek out help and actually put in effort, everyone's willing to help you. Everybody likes someone that wants to try and want to ask questions. And that's what I found out is, like, if you ask anybody a question that's a person of knowledge or somebody that's expertise at anything, they love telling you, and they're not really stingy about helping. So there's always help out there if you really want to seek it. So if you want to learn, just ask someone, and they always come. It's kind of like when I asked Patrice, because I didn't know anything, and then I came up to Patrice, and then she just welcomed me, and look where I am now, right? So
yeah, you've learned a lot. So there's two things I love that you said in there. One, it's like the learning is almost like the glass is both half full and half empty at all times, right? You can either find an excuse or you can go out and find that information. And one of them is an easier choice. And I think that's what most average people do, is make excuses all day long. And I think it's nice. And by the way, everyone here is super duper learning based. And now I can't remember that other thing that you just said. I don't know. I guess I was going to also say how, again, it just shows that quest for learning. And Duck, you were doing this. I met you a year ago. So you had a year in this business before me. And you've had a year on our team, right?
Right.
And you knew us before, so it was neat. And you did go through the mentor program so you learned a lot. So clearly you are the type. And by the way, Duck, you guys who don't know, he went through the mentor program and took every gosh darn deal. He took one from us, like in Modesto. He did one in Lake Tahoe, and then he had one that was relatively close. But Duck is totally the information gatherer. And Duck, I think that's one thing that it'll be really nice for you to sell to your clients, is because you always ask a lot of deep questions as well. And you've also been really inspiring. I didn't know that you guys don't see appraisals until Duck told me. I'm like, wait, what? We'll have to make another class on that. But Duck, you always do a good job of finding out that extra information. So I love that. And again, I think that's a tenet of our team. So while you were talking about learning, what do you think the most important thing that you learned this year that has success? Because obviously you've had a different, right, in the last few months, you've just kicked it into gear. It's like you're a whole different version of yourself, right? What is that one thing that you think has made a difference?
I think the most important thing is being thorough. Like everything I do, like if I'm looking at disclosures, like we're talking about today, just making sure I go through everything and actually know it before I present it to my clients, rather than just kind of winging it. Because I think a lot of times when you take a client out and you're showing them 5 homes, or there's like potentially a lot of homes they're looking at and you're interested in, and then if you show it to them or you bring it to them without any knowledge of it or looking at it in advance, and then they come to you and ask some questions. Sometimes it makes me super nervous. Like I'm really not a very good speaker per se to people I don't know. So I'm kind of nervous. But when I'm thorough with things and I kind of look at it in advance and I prepare myself, then it makes me more of a gives me more courage because I feel like I know I'm a professional. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
And confidence too, right? I mean, we are professionals. You know that you're a professional and you're representing that as a professional. So typically if your clients will look up to you, it feels good.
It does.
And then it gives you an opportunity to sell to them, right? Because gosh, we're talking about $1 million homes all the time. It's hard to say you should buy this house when you don't know if it's actually sliding down the hill in about 14 minutes. You're going to look like an idiot to have an opinion if you really don't know the property, right?
And then you know how we work with Zillow on Zillow sometimes. And one of the things I found is if you don't prepare yourself and look at comps around there or like similar homes, clients always ask me about, oh, did you see this one? It's also listed. And if you don't know, it looks really bad.
It's embarrassing when they know more than you know, right? You're like, oh, righty. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's now I try to prepare a little more, and I notice how preparing is such a big thing.
You know what, that's cool. You know how like with immunizations, they call it like herd immunity?
Right.
You almost get herd knowledge when you start looking at a lot of homes too. It's really neat because when you guys hear me talk about patterns all the time. When we're reading these disclosures and you're seeing house after house, it does help. So like for me, I could pick up a phone call and I can mostly wing it with almost any house, even though I haven't seen it, because I know about what each neighborhood costs. I know the style of most houses and all those things. And so I have like herd immunity, herd knowledge for homes. And usually I can wing it pretty well. But it took me thousands of homes to get to that area. But know that when you're helping one client, even if that guy doesn't buy, that knowledge will help you in the future. So I just kind of want to make sure that you know that too, because that's such a great point, Duck. And sometimes it does feel like we don't have the time for it, and it's really neat. It gives you so many other pieces. It's like the missing link in the chain, kind of, right?
Right.
Cool. I love that. So thank you, Duck. Steph or Diana, which one?
I can go. I don't know if Diana can talk. She's chatting, but anyway, Diana, can you talk? Are you there?
Yeah, I can talk.
Oh, she can talk.
I just didn't want to interrupt people since this is being recorded. I figured I'd just make my comments there instead of interrupting someone.
Did we just lose somebody? We lost Erin.
Yeah, Erin.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, I mean, pretty much along the same lines of what everyone else was saying, but there's some quote that, success is X number of talent. And it's a small percentage. Like anybody can do anything. I mean, I think real estate is a great example because it's a very sophisticated job but you don't need a college degree to do it, let's say, like you do for some things. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's a good example of how, you can gain whatever knowledge you need to do a job. I mean, I used to work in finance and I didn't know anything about finance when I started, and they put me through the program, and I was so eager to prove that me, who was never really into that kind of thing, even though I always liked numbers, but I never really went that direction, could do it. And then when I used to work in finance, and people still do it. Oh, you must have gotten a BFA. And then when I tell them, no, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts actually in theater, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And photography. And they're like, wait a minute, you didn't do any business school? And I'm like, nope. And so it's like, people always have this assumption. So what I'm trying to say is like, you can be anything. You can learn. I mean, the Beatles taught themselves how to play guitar. I mean, there isn't always a roadmap that says that you have to have the natural born talent or, be so smart or whatever. Some of the most successful people taught themselves everything they know, or they watched other people. And that's how they learned. So really you can do anything. You don't have to.
I love that. It's really neat because you're right. It's so funny. People have that excuses that they don't have knowledge, but isn't it that determination and that passion? Because you're right. The most successful people that have made the most money in the last 20 years are tech guys. And most of those guys are dropped out of school and got passionate and focused. Now they're working their booties off and they're certainly specialists in what they do. However, they didn't go and find like the path of like, oh, you need these letters after your name just to get there. So I think that's neat. Yeah. In fact, they're creating a whole new world in many cases.
So I just gonna say one more thing, that my husband says that no matter what you do in life, even if you're a janitor, you have to learn so much about the job that you can be the master of it. So
Yeah.
it shows that learning is the key to any successful business.
And that
or
is
life.
the truth. And by the way, I am the janitor of this team, if you guys did not know. You can resource out the stuff in the middle, but the tough decisions, spending the money and cleaning up the toilets and people's dog do in their yard, that stuff still falls to me. Joking about that. But it's so true. You really want to be the best at what you do and really specialize. And I always make the joke with new agents, because people come up all the time. And I always say, if I could tell you that you would make $1 million and $100,000 in real estate this year, and you have the option of either selling 20 houses or 3, what would you choose? Most people say 3. And then I always say, well, you made the wrong choice, right? Then in 3, then you'll probably be out of this business in the next couple of years, because by the time the first person who sold 20 houses is done, he's worked his tail off. He certainly has had a lower hourly wage. However, that person is a real estate professional at the end of the day. Whereas the person who has only sold 3 houses is not an expert in lead generation. There's no way he's an expert in negotiation. There's no way he's an expert in disclosure. He doesn't know his market, right? It would be unlikely that that person could be a true professional that can build the type of business. I see people all the time that start their first year real estate and they sell 3 to 5 houses. This seems to be the pattern I see a lot. And then they struggle for 2 years after, and they never understand it. And what it is they got lucky. They worked really hard at the open houses at the beginning. It seemed easy. They sold a friend, and then maybe they got one referral, and they just kind of never got there. So I don't mean to go down that route, but I do think it's kind of that same vein, right? It's just that knowledge is truly the key to all of this, and it's that passion to get it. So I love that. And Diana, you go, because you've had so much growth this year as well. So in a lot of categories. So I'm excited to hear what you're going to say.
I can relate with this one, because it kind of goes with, if you're not willing to learn, then basically, as much as somebody may try to teach you, your stubbornness of not wanting to learn, you're not going to learn it. So they're wasting their time. Until you're wanting to actually learn it is when everybody will be able to help you, because you're learning from everyone, which is basically what I've done. I've had moments where I'm trying to learn, other moments where I've kind of regressed from learning, and then I had to get myself back out of the shell to get back into learning and doing more. So it is a lot of process. And the only time that you can actually learn is when you're wanting to, because then you're willing to, instead of being stubborn going, I don't want to do this. This is stupid.
Yeah, which is so natural and easy to fall into, by the way. There's no judgment on that. And you've learned a lot in the last 6 months in a pandemic. And I think part of it is we talk about is we all need to be more gentle on ourselves and realize and appreciate and respect our progress. So don't you think that's part of our learning as well?
Yeah.
Is
everything is part of a learning, no matter what you're doing. As long as you're learning every day about something, then at least it's helping you, whether it be real estate or your life or you personally.
Yeah. And again, on our team, every one of us, we have all dug deep and gotten really intense with ourselves and talked about our values and who we are as people. And I think that, none of that has been simple. And I'm really proud of everybody on this team for what they've shown me and the connection that we've had and going deep. So thank you guys very much. And next year is going to be crazy exciting. And I love that. And I'm excited about going over this topic with you guys too. And I will say, poor Diana picked a 646 page disclosure packet.
One that had so many, and I was like, damn it, because I picked that one just because we used to live over there before we bought our house where we're at right now. And I figured, hey, why not do this one? And then I looked at it going, oh shit, where the fuck did sorry, but I'm like, why did I pick this one? There's 76 documents. There's a whole bunch of other pages. They get minutes for every meeting from the beginning of January till November. I was like, oh my God,
you really helped us all, right? You have shown us the full spectrum. So today's neat. The ones in Duck, if you sent one, I didn't see yours. So I have Stephanie's, Erin, and Diana's. If we have time, we'll go over yours. So Diana's Zarine's a little bit shorter, and then Steph's she kind of has a synopsis. Did everybody see Stephanie's synopsis already?
Yes, Stephanie, and that helped me because it kind of was like, okay, yeah, I did that. No, I didn't do that part. Okay, I got to look at those things for that part. So thank you, Stephanie. That really helped me out. So I needed that.
Well, and the reason I'm saying in those orders, because we'll go through Zarine's and then Stephanie's and then Diana, you have a lot in there. And I actually took some notes on some of the pages that I want to attract you to.
Well, I kind of figured,
so-
hey, I didn't want to pick an easier one after this because I'm like, well, then most of the rest after this will be easy for me to figure out. I'll do the hardest one with y'all.
It will. And Diana, when you asked about things, because Diana, poor thing, had to review a lot of CCNRs, but you asked yesterday, do I need to do the CCNRs? And what did I say?
You said, well, just kind of gloss over the important things. So I tried to figure out what's the important things. And I think I wrote down what's
That
important. but
portion, I
forgot
said,
to-
if you think you're going to have to ever explain any of this to a client, we better know it all.
Yeah.
So ask lots of questions, you guys, because it's definitely new. I have always gotten deep into everything. And one of the things that we're going to work on is me, doing more of these like emails when you send out these packets. And I really need to get on that. However, I want you guys to have a real good knowledge, because again, when Duck talks about that confidence to be with a client, it certainly helps when I can't wait to give someone a disclosure packet, right? Because those of you that have seen me work with clients, especially in a house, like I impress the crap out of somebody because I am so knowledgeable. They just are like, they're eating out of my hand, which is why I have a hard time getting rid of them sometimes. And I'm not just saying this to be cocky because I'm really wonderful. We all know that already, and I don't have. But the reason I'm saying it is because this is how you get to your confidence level. And this is how you become that specialist when they go, I would never go with another agent. There's no way that someone's going to compete. I used to say, if someone got in my car, I was never going to lose them again, because most agents don't have the same dialogue that I have. And instead of selling, I'm educating. And this is what you guys are going to do. So this is really, really cool. So I'm going to pull up the one that Zareen has. And
Can I say something really fast?
Please.
You definitely should send a generalized email of all the disclosures and what maybe some key points to the types of things that they'll find in each one. But I want to encourage you guys to do not summarize disclosures for clients in an email. Do not.
No. Mine, the email that I have is just really going to say the preliminary title has this kind of information. The home report has this kind of information. We want them to give us theirs. And again, that's a great point, Stephanie. The boilerplate is always, I see these all day long. And so I'm not going to be as sensitive to things as you will, right? I have sellers that have no problem with foundation issues and sellers that have a heart attack if a broken light switch is there. You can't ask my opinion. I'm only going to point out the things that I see that are common that most people ask for. So I use that common, not standard, common, right? I'm only telling you the things that most people commonly have issues with, and I'm less sensitive because I've been through everything. I've literally been an inspection and they said there's an underground stream under your house. Your house could wash away at any moment. I'm like, what in the hell? They're like, okay, great. I'm like, are you crazy? They were both engineers. They weren't too bothered by it. So I was like, oh, okay, goody. Right. And they closed it.
Yeah, if you do what Patrice said, if you send a generalized email, this is what you'll find in each report. And then if they send you a direct question on email, then you can answer it, or you can keep a chain of how you got that information. But just be careful. The reason I'm telling you this, in case you guys don't know, is why you don't want to summarize them, is because if they were ever to sue you and say you didn't tell them about something, you've already set yourself up for what you were supposed to tell them. We're not supposed to tell them anything. We are supposed to give them disclosures and they are supposed to read them. And yes, we are good agents if we explain it, if we point things out. But if you were to point things out in an email and leave some things out, you've set yourself up for just as much liability. And we're not perfect. This isn't our scope of business. So you want to make sure
we're not supposed to be. If we were, I'm good. And I always say on everything, I'm no inspector, but I'm not a pest inspector, but and I say that now I say it as a cute joke. And you're absolutely right, Stephanie. It's not your place to advise them.
Only put things in email if I want to reiterate something and have them sign off on it. Otherwise, I do things on phone only. And text is the same way, you guys. If we ever were to go to a lawsuit for anything serious, they can pull every one of our texts to a client. So just be aware. Done on the phone is always the safest explanation. And then you can reiterate what you talked about on the phone and have them confirm that they agree. That's what I do.
Yeah,
because
put that in an email, right?
It's not to scare you. It's just that, people always think a paper trail will save them, but only if the paper trail is perfect. If the paper trail actually shows you left something out, then you've screwed yourself. So just FYI, it's more of a, it's more to reiterate. Everything should be done on the phone, and always encourage clients to read them themselves because it's their house.
100%. Yes, there's definitely always that CYA, and I kind of hate that expression, and yet it is true. because it is very tricky. And people, I'm always uncomfortable with clients that don't read things. Like I love a tough client that is getting and asking me a lot of questions. That means that they are actually doing their homework. It stresses me out if they don't do their work, because I definitely feel like it's a lot more liability for me. So yeah. And make sure, again, you guys do want to put some stuff in writing, the stuff that's advising them. Stephanie just had to waive inspections for a client, and she called around to our office. We really had a lot of discussion. Unfortunately, with the conditions of our current market, that is what other buyers are doing. And so to get your offer accepted, we're having to match these conditions, even though we know that it makes us nervous as agents, and it makes us brokers nervous, and it makes us nervous as people who care about our clients. They're taking a risk. Unfortunately, that is the market that we're working in, and we will stop doing it as soon as we can. But right now, if everybody's writing no contingencies, it's very difficult to get a seller to accept it with contingencies unless your client's going to give an awful lot of money. So they can make a decision of way overpaying and having that right, or of not doing any contingencies. So we went back and forth. And so Stephanie, we talked a lot about, she sent over, look, we cannot give you advice to waive these things. Our broker does not want you to do it. And yet every other buyer is, and it's up to you. You really need to decide if this is something you feel comfortable with. Notice how we're putting it on them, not pointing fingers and blaming, but it's, you know, it's your decision to make if you want to go in for this house. These may be the conditions that are required, and you're taking this risk on your own so they can know. And those guys were like, oh yeah, they really wanted to. Stephanie was trying to hold them back. And yet, even though she was doing it, she had to make sure to put that in writing. So.
And I have just extra, because we don't want to focus on this too long. I've had a past experience where we had a discussion, and the sellers said, you cannot do more inspections. We will not let you, we won't take your offer. And we agreed to a re-inspection. And then later in the transaction, I tried to get my clients to sign a BIW, which is the buyer inspection waiver, and they wouldn't do it. And they said, you made us do this. So that was like a year ago. And I have learned my lesson that clients are going to sign that thing before and I was really nice to my clients. I said, I don't want you to have to waive this, but this is the market. And if you're comfortable, I need you to sign this form, and I need you to confirm this email that I'm sending you right now. And that's to protect all of us, that we're all on the same page. And I will not remove your contingencies until you agree to this email. And they said, and I didn't say it in like such a threatening way, but I'm like, I am laying all this out. And we had a moment where they were considering taking our offer, and they wanted us to change a few things on our contract. And I even said to my clients, hurry up, go reread your disclosures real fast and make sure everything is kosher in there before we we've had a lot of days to fool around, and now it's ours. So go in there and check. And they even said, is there something in there you think we should worry about? I thought we didn't see anything. And I was like, we didn't, but like, we've been given another free chance to look. So let's look now so we can all agree that we're good to go. And so they rushed over and read it again. And that way, I have communication that we re-looked at it, so just that kind of stuff, just reiterating that the client is clear. I mean, Phil told me this is beyond what I feel like doing, but Phil was like, with Zoom existing now, you can literally have a Zoom with your client. You can tell them you're recording them just for, just to keep it. And then you can circle stuff on the screen, and then there will never be any question that, are you sure you want to waive these contingencies?
That's a great idea, actually. It's good to get that connection in FaceTime. Yeah. Well, and again, you guys, it's stressful, and we're dealing with people that are putting a lot of money and a lot of responsibility. And just so everybody knows, I'm a listing agent, right? The disclosures to protect me, not you. If there's one thing, and this is what I tell my client, and Liz knows because she hears this all day long. If you get inspections, nothing's a big deal before we're in escrow. Everybody wants this house. They're going to do whatever I say. The minute we get in a contract, everyone changes their mind and they don't want it. So we have to tell them everything that we want up front. It's to protect us. It's our negotiation. It's not for the buyers. It's for the sellers. Make no mistake about it, right? So you guys are on the other side. It's not for you, right? It is against you, technically, right? You're learning all of this stuff, and your clients are having to waive. We're doing our very best because we do have a legal requirement on our side, but I only know so much as an agent. You don't know. I've had sellers that have made me a little bit nervous for sure. And again, it goes back to that psychology, as we always do. The minute your buyer, your loving buyer who said, I'll do anything to get that house, the minute his ink is signed, he doesn't want it. He thinks he overpaid. So he's, even in his own mind, he's going to believe that no, I didn't waive that. It's like, yeah, you did, right? We all do that. That's natural. Or we do that with our spouses, our children, our family, all of that stuff. We all think when we want something, it's like, we'll take anything for it. And the minute that we don't need anymore, it changes. So that same wonderful client, they don't become less wonderful. But gosh, if something really does happen, it is very traumatic for them. And they just won't remember, you guys. They just won't remember what's gone through. So anyway, this is all important, and it's important for them to go through it so that you know and have peace of mind. And there's one thing that I always thought, because again, you know me, I'm over the top thorough on everything. If one client ever came back and said, you didn't tell me about that, I would go, are you insane? I could parade every client I've ever had, stand after stand after stand. And when they say, Patrice, she told us about, you know what? She spent an hour going through the contract with us. No other agent even goes through the contract. Are you insane? I used to be an agent. I used to be an attorney. I don't care. You're going to know what you're doing with me. And if I ever got into a lawsuit, I could parade client after client after client, and that person would have a very difficult time showing that Patrice Sandstrom has ever been not thorough with them. Like, good luck with that, right? So again, remember that this is all part of the whole package. This is who we are as a business. It's certainly who we are as a team. It's why we get the referrals, and it's why we get those testimonials, is because you guys, we make a lot of money per hour, a lot of money. We technically can make, if you guys do your 100 contacts a week and you commit to 40 to 50 hours, you will make more than a surgeon. That's a lot of money. You guys don't have a surgeon degree. You don't have all of that debt. You'll make a lot of money. We need to be really good at what we do so that we can be proud and know that we earn that money. I earn that money. I make more than a lot of listing agents get. I expect 5.5% on most of my listings. Why? Because I'm good. Because I know I'm better than the next guy. I couldn't accept that money if I didn't know that I was better. Same with you guys. So anyway, does that sound good? Does everybody agree? I do think that was important stuff. Zareen?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to go on to Zareen's report. Dun, dun, dun. So Zareen, you just have the pest report.
So I have a lot. I sent everything actually.
Oh, why did I not see that? I thought that there was more.
So I sent the cover sheet, which I just wanted you, if you don't mind, going from like first the cover letter.
I had definitely have an email problem, you guys. The other day I found all of Liz's stuff was going. Was that on Tuesday? Here we go. I think so.
Yeah.
I think she sent the disclosures in a link, and then she attached the.
Oh, okay. I didn't see. Yep, the link is the problem. User error. Sorry, Zareen. Okay, we can go through that one too.
Okay. So if we can go from like cover letter.
Now, did you write a cover letter, or this is their cover letter?
No, this is the cover letter that indicates, it has all the sections and disclosures, the Avid, a statewide buyer and sellers advisory, Megan's Law. It has all that, the pages that are in the disclosure, the things that we need to look out. So,
do you guys have that? Because when I click on this link, it's still just the specialty report. Wait, sorry, Zareen.
It's okay.
And the one that Liz sent me doesn't have it either. Do you guys have the full one from Zareen?
Specialty report. I don't see.
Nope,
Let me look
just
through.
specialty.
You just see,
Yeah, it's we only have the specialty on there.
okay, let me go back and.
You can send it over to me, and we'll do that one last then. So I'm just so I just wanted to say what I write on her report. God, my handwriting is so mad. Oh, I just wanted to say, because that was only a pest report and this one was fairly simple. Obviously, it's nice having the map, of course. Definitely the drywood termites is starting to be a little bit more common. On that one, if someone is going to get a credit, just make sure that your buyers know that they can't really fully move in until after that termite has been done. It's better before. You can't have any food in the house. I have had furnishings in the house, but not food, and it has to be vacant for a couple of days. So just make sure that you're aware that your buyers are not expecting to move in on something that has drywood termites on it. And then the other thing that I think can really catch people, and I've had it catch me, and I've seen it catch a lot of people on the other side, is I'm on page 9 of 11 on the work authorization. That section 2 and further inspection, which is section 3, are very slippery. Because when it says tradesperson, a lot of times you're looking at the total, you're like, oh, this is only $2,900. If it's like a roof or a plumbing issue, it can be $20,000. So again, you can't take that little shortcut.
Okay, if you don't mind, let's go to the pets inspection. And then, so the first that you see is a wood destroying and organism inspection report. So then we're going down. You just have to tell me what pages are the most important page that we need to look into it. Scope of inspection, should I read the scope of inspection? Is that something that
No, so I scroll down. Thank you, that's a good point. Okay, so I scroll down, so I looked at the map. And then I scroll down to where the findings actually are. So for this one, it's page, where's the page number? Page, it says 5th, so I think it's the 5th page.
Yeah, 5th. Okay,
so I scroll, I just like don't look at any of that stuff until that section. Thank you. So, and then first it's going to have section 1. So section 1 is already damaged items. So anything that has rot. So some people call it a termite report, which is incorrect. It shouldn't be called that. It's a pest report. So it's termites, fungus, dry rot, and beetles are the most common wood destroying things that we see. So any of those will work out. Regular termites that come subterranean, they will put stuff in the ground in the dirt, and that treatment can only be done by a pest company that's licensed with it, by the way. And left untreated, that should actually protect a house for 3 to 5 years. It could be longer, but that's what the guarantee is. People ask all the time if that's safe for animals. It's kind of the same thing. I've heard, I'm not an expert here, that they put on the, you know, you put that on your back of your dog's neck, that poison that keeps the fleas away. It's a super concentrated version of that. So technically, it's totally fine to live with it. People put it on their animals that they touch all the time. So just so you know on that. The drywood termites, though, are the ones that swarm, and those guys need to be tinted. And I believe beetles also need to be tinted, and beetles are just disgusting. You guys would be impressed. So I can actually pick off a beetle board.
Item number 2. So item number 1, fungus has damaged the tree rafter tails at the front sides of the structure. That's not like a really big deal. Is that a big deal?
No, so fungus usually happens on trim and dry rot. So rafter tails are those things that are under the roof that are coming out. And Zareen, you've seen me point those out. We see those a lot, and sometimes they can just shave the edge of them off, prime and paint it, and it could be done. So that would be considered easy. That's not a big deal.
I don't know what it was. I can't fucking find it. I don't know if it was on regular paper. I don't know if it was on Post-it. It's just fucking gone.
Okay.
Sorry.
And number 2, the finding evidence of a drywood termite. So that is a big deal.
That's a bigger deal. Yeah, and the reason that things are bigger deal is when they have to be done by a professional and they can't just be done on their own. So this has to be done by a fumigation company. And usually, actually, it's not even the pest company that's doing the inspection that does it. It's only certain people that do those tintings. So that can also take days to get that on the schedule too, which is an issue. So make sure you're paying attention. And by the way, none of this is a big issue. This is all very normal and fairly common to see all of these things. So it's not that it's an issue. It's just more problematic because you have to hire somebody. So that price that you see is a lot more, that one's, you're not negotiating it. There's only a couple people that do it. So that's how much it costs or more. So sometimes it could cost even a little bit more.
Okay, because what they're doing is they will tint the house and people, they cannot live in the house. Because with this, when I spoke to the listing agent, I asked them, they said that they cannot do it while the house is in escrow. So it's a good to know that you cannot do this fumigation while the house, while we're in escrow. So
yeah, exactly. So it's going to have to be done. So the house is going to close and it will then be the buyer's house. So even if the seller's paying for it, it typically just gets paid through escrow. And then
Okay.
the pest company will be paid. Or there'll be a credit to the buyer and then the buyer can pay it themselves.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Can
that's
I chime in for a second?
Yeah,
Erin, this might make it easier for you. I think most of us, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, I don't go line by line in the pest inspection. Section
Okay.
1 is anything that's already damaged. It's already causing damage to the house. So the reality is it is important. When we say it's
Okay.
not that important, we mean it's standard. All houses have dry rot on them. Sellers sell houses with
yes.
anything under $15,000 is considered normal wear and tear. So basically in a seller's market, the buyers take on that responsibility. Now, it doesn't mean it's not important. It should be done in the next year or two because it's already damaging the house. There is already signs of wood rotting damage. Section 2 is on its way to damaging the house. So all that stuff is stuff that technically should be done. Do people do 15 years of deferred dry rot maintenance? Yes, they do. And it's bad for their house. But you shouldn't go line by line and say rafters are more important than window siding. They're all the same. It's all wood.
Well, I mean, not foundation and a support beam would certainly be more, but no, you
Right.
you make a really good point. And by the way, like a leaking sink could either be a section 1 or a section 2 item. Peeling paint
Okay.
could be a section 1 or section 2. So obviously, even if it's not a section 1, doesn't mean that it's not something. Thanks, Stephanie. Right? You don't want a leaking house. That's not okay. It hasn't damaged the wood yet, but it needs to be fixed, right? And then same with peeling paint. You can't leave that wood exposed. It's just going to be rotting your house away and it's going to be damaged. If the wood's already damaged, if it's been long enough, and it should take years, I mean, they're really leaving it for too long, then it's section 1. Otherwise, it's section 2. So a clearance is when there's no more section 1 though. So a lot of times we hear a lot more about section 1, and this is what I'm going to show you on this report, is that sometimes section 2 items are just as problematic. So if we scroll down to items, let's see, item 3, we have the water stains, probably not a big old deal, right? You ask them, there's probably something in the roof. It certainly is good to have a question about. You need to have some dialogue to say, was there a leak and what happened? Because you could find out about other things, right? It could be leaking in the attic and you don't even know that there's a mold infestation. And it also could be absolutely nothing. And then the last two, item 4 and 5, those are section 2 items. It has tradesperson, which means it doesn't have a total, and a lot of people just go to that total. But you certainly, again, you've got an active plumbing leak. So let me just tell you, your buyer, you got to make sure that your buyers know about that and they're okay with. And for me personally, as a listing agent, I will usually make my sellers fix a leaking plumbing. I mean, they shouldn't be getting a damaged house, right? Like, even if it's on the disclosures, we just sold that house on Victoria Loop and the people took it as is. Well, we still had the plumbing fixed. It just seems inappropriate and negligent to sell a house that isn't. So I wouldn't be opposed to someone asking me for that particular thing. Now that guy was like, oh, there's a dent in the garage door and like there's a scuff on the wall. I'm like, good, enjoy it. That's your house. But there are certain things that you can do. We also replaced some sprinkler head covers because I thought a safety issue should be there. So just making sure, like I would have that dialogue with the agent. Don't just write any kind of request that your agent is not expecting because it really does look bad for you. But you can have that dialogue. Hey, what do you think? Do you think I can ask for this? Because obviously it's actively leaking. I'm sure you're going to get that fixed before close of escrow, right? And just kind of sit there because most people would. Otherwise, it just seems odd, right? People have a pride of ownership usually.
So with this all these leaks and little things, I did have a conversation. So it was a learning curve for me. I did call the agent. I did ask. So, and then he said, let me resend you things. The item has been improved and fixed. So
perfect.
So yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. And remember in the contract, when I talk about that section, that this is an as-is contract, just because you find it doesn't mean it has to be done. And it doesn't have to be done with a licensed person unless you specify. But if they fix it already, there's nothing that has to be done. But you're just trusting, and we assume that seller knows how to take good care of his house as he's taken care of before. But just know that when they say it's taken care of, it doesn't necessarily mean it was done with a licensed contractor. If that is something that it seems like your buyer would have an issue with, and that would be things like major plumbing, electrical, you may want to go further and ask that question. Obviously, that's not going to come up in a pest inspection, but maybe it is, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
yes, we saw there was that foundation crack and we fixed that. You're like, oh, great. And then you find out later, it's like, hey, can you tell me how you fix it? Oh, yeah. My uncle was over and we were just drinking the other day because it was Thanksgiving and we were doing shots. And he told me that he could fix that with if I had some silicone glue and toothpaste. So we just went there and we filled that foundation crack, right? Obviously, I'm being silly, but you don't know what it is. So you need to think about, as a professional, what kind of things could be expensive and which things you have to escalate dialogue. We talk all the time, and I call us agent whisperers. What that means is we ask a lot of freaking questions. We end up in relationship with these people. They have a harder time taking advantage of us and all of those things. And you need to learn those things for your clients, and you need to be their voice. So that's a great question. Thank you, Zareen.
Thank you.
What was I going to say? Yeah. So again, just watch out for that other trade. So scroll down to the last page. And of course, there's the pictures too, you guys. I oftentimes look at the pictures.
Can you, page 6, finding and recommendation, finding item 6, please? On page 6, item 6, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, sorry, cellulose debris. So cellulose debris is paper. It's oftentimes paper. It could be an old baby doll, and usually it's wood. Sometimes people will have extra shingles for their roof and it's wrapped in paper. That paper is considered cellulose debris. Anything that would be attractive to a wood destroying creature like a termite, termites love paper. So it's like chum in the water. So when they leave wood or paper, that's considered cellulose debris, and they charge $250 to get in there all the time and clean it up. And it's in almost every house. There's something.
Even cardboard counts. One of the gentlemen who did an inspection said cardboard is like a dessert. It's
yes, yeah, it's made of paper, and they love it. It's literally like chum in the water for sharks, but for termites.
Okay, thank you.
It's like a little appetizer. Thank you. Sorry about missing that one. And then so the next page is just kind of the fumigation disclosure. Again, I don't totally know, but as you can see, there's something dangerous in there if they're giving us a disclosure. So do not, you don't want to mix those findings. And again, the big thing to know is they know their regulations. You just need to have a couple of days. So if your client's buying a place, and even when the seller pays for it, make sure that they have a place to stay and they're not expecting to move in right away.
So that to have a conversation with them and explain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is going to take a couple of days. So make sure you don't schedule your movers until kind of thing. And then the last page, which is 9 of 11, is the work authorization contract. So again, that's a quick and easy way. I always go through the details, but what I do is I actually look here first for the numbers, and then I go back and start at 1. So I actually always start with this form. And some reports, they're all different. Sometimes you'll have 3 different attachments. This one's just 1. But sometimes you'll notice that there's a second. I think HomeGuard does that, where the work authorization is actually a separate package. So I technically look there first because I want to see what to look for. But notice, section 1, you're like, oh, great, here's the numbers. The fungus and the dry rot, someone could probably fix some of the trim on their own. So that section 1 is easy. The 2005, they're hiring someone to do that. So that number only goes usually up. Sometimes you can negotiate a discount with these guys. Depends on how busy they are. But again, there aren't many people that do that dry wood termite. So your client probably will have to pay that. Section 2 items, again, that's something on the way to damage. When that says specialty roof, they're not considering what a roofer is going to charge you, right? So they'll go in and take care of the wood, but someone's going to have to put the roof back because they're not qualified to put the roof back. If you hire a handyman and he puts the roof back on wrong, and even though if you get a section 1 clearance from another pest inspector, you don't know if there won't be issues down the line. So you just want to make sure that you can advise your clients on these kind of things. That if it has something to do with the roof, they might need a roofer to make sure it goes back together. Otherwise, the roof won't be functioning properly, and they will lose the warranty on that roof if anyone else does work on the roof outside of the person who is willing and able to take responsibility. Does that make sense? I can't even see you guys. I assume you're giving thumbs up.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then again, that tradesperson on 4 and 5, you assume it's 0, but you need to hire a plumber. And then this is a good discussion. You can tell look, we can ask the seller to do it. If they say they want a licensed plumber, it's going to be more expensive and maybe a little bit more difficult. So, and if you're just asking for a credit, you're fine. And by the way, we all know right now we're taking everything pretty much as is. But your client may want to have an inspection and find out if they're taking it on you know, they can have a plumber come in to give them an estimate. Even though they may not be able to negotiate, it's still kind of nice for them to have that information. And again, the cellulose debris is always $250. It could be one piece of paper under there, it's $250. So I've had my buyers that have had to go under because we didn't want to deal with it and they needed to clear it for an FHA deal. You know, you might want to send them under and make sure that that's cleared too. You know, just be resourceful in that way. Any questions on this one, you guys? And then if not, we'll move on to Stephanie's.
So my client right now just had we just waived the contingency we waived all our contingencies too, and they had a lot of dry rot, but she was okay with paying for the dry rot, fixing herself. But when I had the home inspector out, I actually told him about it, and then he went to the side and looked at it with the clients, and he actually was just talking to them a little bit about it, just to kind of tell them that, oh, you know, this is really normal around this area. So it kind of helped out for them to kind of feel more secure about the choice.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, knowledge is power, right? And again, you will start to notice that the trim or the damage is almost always in the same area. You're like, oh, this is easy. You know, you go in with your pen. I do it with my sunglasses frame sometimes. I'm like, this is dry rot. I show it to my buyers when I'm there. It's already damaged. You're not causing any more damage. It's just a nice way for you to show them kind of what's going on. So, and usually the inspector has poked a hole in there too, but yeah, it's all important. And you guys, you're having these people sign away their contingencies. They still have a right to know. You better give them as much information as you can and make sure that they are pretty familiar. And imagine how familiar it is for you. I know, like, there's something actually in, I think one of Diana's reports that alerts me that, oh gosh, this could be something expensive hiding behind it. So I'll go over that with you after.
I'm guessing the toilet from the bottom to the top. That's kind of what I was worried about. Oh.
No, it's something I don't even know officially what it is, but I know I've had issues. But the more you know, just the better it is. It's so important for you to advise your clients that, oh my gosh, you got to watch out for this. There's two instances that I think that I would never negotiate. There's two things that come up in pest inspections that I'll never take credit for. Everything else, I want a seller to fix because I think that it could be tens of thousands of dollars more. Every other thing, I want the money because I assume that I can get a better deal on trades. So, but these two things, and I'll make sure to say that to you during that part. Okay, two things. Okay, perfect. So our next one is going to be Stephanie's, which is really, this is kind of one of those things that it's a lot of paper and very little information.
Can I ask one more question, if you don't mind? So for the foundation, where would I find things on a foundation? Like if there's a problem with the foundation, would it be on this report?
Both the home inspector and the pest inspector should have some comment on those. A lot of times the pest company will, in many cases, they'll talk about cracks, but so will the home if they see it. But what they'll usually say if they see a crack is that you need to hire a foundation inspector for more details. So typically, I always get my horizontal and my verticals. So a vertical crack up and down oftentimes is not quite as bad. I'm no inspector, by the way. But we see that a lot of times it's a cold joint. It's when the concrete was poured at a separate time for there. So you see a lot of cracks. And then sometimes because of the natural movement, you'll have a little bit of separation. Obviously, I always say if you can put a business card or your fingernail through it, that's when we start to get concerned. But we see lots of like little tiny cracks that may not be anything. Of course, you have to investigate. Anytime you see a crack that's diagonal across a wall, I start looking behind in other rooms to see, is this a pattern going across? Typically, that is a really big problem. Any diagonal across a room, huge problem. Doorway cracks, window cracks, no big deal, very common. We have a house that's made out of a wood frame and the clay soil is expansive. So it's like a wet sponge. So in the winter, your house pushes up and in the summer it dries out and it goes back down. So you have a wood frame house that's literally doing this all year long for the entire life of the house. And it's made to do that, by the way. It's totally okay. And oftentimes it'll crack your paint in the drywall. So that's common. In most cases, of course, you have to investigate if you think it's big. I don't think that's me. And then we talked about foundation cracks up and down, no problem. Anything across, major problem. What that usually means is that there's some rebar inside And that rebar in a lot of cases has started to deteriorate. So if there's some rebar in there, anytime you have a horizontal crack, it's a problem. What happens a lot of times is if the soil is too moist, it's got so much pressure for the house, it just kind of starts slumping down and the foundation will bulge out, and you'll see that. So almost every time you see a horizontal crack, it's either rebar or it's got some sort of settling problem. So that's the quick down and dirty, but you always want to double check and ask those questions. But up and down, less problematic. Diagonal, yikes-a-rooney, big trouble. And then across is a foundation problem.
Out of curiosity, what if you get one that partly goes across and then it goes up? So it starts across.
Basically, if you have that bad condition, it's automatically bad. It doesn't negate, right? So you just have to look at it. If you have any one bad condition, doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter how easy the other ones were. You have to get a foundation inspection. You have to advise that because it's a lot of money. Roofs and foundations, everything else you can kind of fix. A seller can fix most of those things on their own. Call it that drunk uncle again, and they can put some work together. Or they can hire someone, but a foundation is a big deal, and so is a roof, because those, if there's a problem, are a big, it's a lot more expensive and harder to fix.
Well, and the
Crack
other
on
thing
a
too,
ceiling. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say moisture too. The things that the pest inspector and the home inspector are gonna tell you is if there's moisture in the crawl space or signs of effervescent, a wet foundation is the first step to a crumbling foundation, because if your drainage is bad, water gets in there and that starts to it doesn't have to be
right,
that,
yeah,
but
it just depends.
over time, if water's getting into your crawl space and never getting out for 50 years, you're likely to need a new foundation. So like,
yes,
drainage
and
is another
efflorescence
one.
is that white stuff that you see. It's like it's the salt and minerals coming out of your concrete. When the water goes through, it weeps out. And you're right, Stephanie, that's when you start to see that crumbling of the concrete. It's like eroding away.
But we all have water in our crawl space in this clay area, and there's going to be effervescence on all crawl space most likely. But the point is, like, if they say that it hasn't rained in a month and there's standing water in the crawl space, that's that you need to get
in the summer. Big trouble. Yeah,
because drainage is about to recreate drainage in a backyard with a French drain and all that can be $50,000+. So like that would be also a little high ticket thing you want to keep your eye out for on a pest inspection is water.
Yeah, and it's really neat because again, talking about that clay soil, you guys know what clay is like. It's so thick. Once I had a house that I sold and the clients called me over, they bought after. It's Matt Wakefield. He's now since redone the house. He was having moisture in his bedroom and he didn't understand it. He just bought the house. So he called, Patrice, I'll do anything. So he calls me over and I get out there with a shovel and we started like pulling back and we noticed that it just didn't make sense for that room to have. So we started pulling back the dirt, which ended up being clay from behind his house. And once we got far enough and deep enough, that clay is impermeable. So we pulled the clay back and water started flowing out from his house and we were able to direct it. And the room was not flooded because it was really weird. He'd had some foundation problems anyway, but he had one flooded room and it was really crazy. And it was really fascinating because when we got rid of that clay soil, it had room. So as much as the clay, you don't even think about it, it actually could trap the moisture in there. And so it wasn't naturally able to drain. Now, again, he already knew about the foundation inspection and we got a neighborhood that he really wanted. And now since the foundation had some issues, but it shouldn't have in that room. So it's kind of neat how that works out. So you're right. Moisture, definitely an issue. It could create the bad M's, which are mold and mildew, which we want to work out for. And typically drainage solution to make sure that it's draining properly is the best thing. And then lots of air vents under a house. The other solution that I've had, which is really expensive and it's controversial actually, is to put a moisture barrier underneath your house, but then the moisture never gets to dry. So it kind of everyone has to decide. It may help with mold and mildew, but it also keeps more moisture underneath your house for longer, which means your house could have more problems. So yep, water's a problem. But by the way, you guys, we sell crooked houses with bad foundations all the time. It's not that someone won't buy the house, but it certainly does affect the price.
Well, I want to show you guys something really quick if you're willing. My house was built in 2004, rebuilt by a contractor. And this will show you what is reality. I want to show you guys this. Can you see? Let's see if you can see it. My camera's not that good. Can you guys see?
I see a table and a window.
Okay.
I see something.
There should
A
be there's like
darkening?
a really big
Oh,
crack.
I see the crack. Yeah.
Okay, so you see that, you guys? I have those diagonal cracks coming out of almost every doorway, and I could stick a business card in there.
Well, those
They're
aren't bad
really-
though. That's not the
really-
bad kind though.
Right.
Oh,
I was
okay,
gonna
that's a
say
good
those look
point.
bad. I was gonna show you those because they look bad.
Yeah,
I
you're
have
right.
a
Thank
house
you.
that was only built 15 years ago. When I bought it, it was beautiful. And then after our heavy rains, every single door and window I have has a gigantic diagonal crack coming out of it. And I called a foundation repair company. They went under my house and said, I have a beautifully built foundation and that this is just from clay soil and that I can have the in between the rooms, I could have them jacked up if I wanted to stop that for some period of time, or I could just drywall it and paint it again. Cause they're like, it's going to happen again in a couple years. So my point was even though I saw these all the time when it started happening at my house, I'm like, these cracks are huge. These were bigger than any crack I'd ever seen in a client's house. And I was like freaking out. And then the guy came and told me, nope, that's normal. And you should warn your clients that a couple years after they get their house and it's been painted and everything, they're going to start cracking. And
And someone on our team actually sent me something and said at some point, like, oh my God, we have expansive clay soil. Like, do I need to worry about it? My client's freaking out. I think it might've been Angela. I don't remember who it was. I was like, no, that's just how it is. By the way, this is a condition that's in the entire Bay Area. So it's not that you can't get out of it.
And it's on the NHD, by the way.
Yeah, it's normal. Now, liquefaction is a lot more problematic. That's on a natural hazard disclosure. And we should do a natural hazard that needs to be its own thing because that people forget about. And that's actually really a problematic thing with a lot of stuff. So we'll save that for later. But know that, again, when you're looking at those, it's usually for the entire area. It's not like your house is the only one that has clay underneath it and everybody else got the good dirt. It's like, no, it's all a mess. And there's great things about it as well. It's also fairly stable, right? So
if you had a slab, that won't happen, right?
It will
no,
happen
it
because
can.
every house expands and contracts because of the materials that they are. My door sometimes won't open easily, but during the winter it's fine because it's gotten smaller. Or you know, or
a slab can be worse because in order to fix the slab's foundation, they have to lift the house and fix and relay the concrete. So actually a raised foundation is a lot easier to fix that kind of stuff than a slab. Like I had a client who had a slab and then a huge tree in the front yard that destroyed the entire foundation. And it was like $100,000 to fix that slab
or
foundation.
more.
So.
Matt's had a crack. All of the rooms were like this. Like I said, that one room with the water, we just weren't, I'm like, wait a minute, that's one of our good rooms. What's going on?
That should be raised though for Matt, right? He has a raised foundation?
He's foundation, he's slab, yeah.
Oh,
And there's a lot of
Valley.
foundation
That's
stuff over there.
surprising.
And again, that's Lafayette, so. All right, so let's go to Stephanie's. Oh, we are in Stephanie's. So Steph, everyone read your synopsis? Did everybody read her Steph's synopsis?
Yep.
Yeah, do you want me to say something or you?
Well, I want to see if anyone has questions on that or things that they would do differently.
let's go back and read this. For the MLS tax suite, I don't know, what are we supposed to be looking over with that? Is
I
there
don't
anything-
know.
'cause-
That's
Okay,
why I
because you
said
had a
that.
question mark and you put it on there, like, well, I kind of glazed over it. I'm like, well, he bought the house in 2002. That's about all I can tell you. And how it's gone up for, property taxes and how it went back down. But, that's like
It's a good
1 year
summary of who
property
has
tax.
title. Yeah, it was a summary. I've never done anything with it. It's not always in there. It was in this one.
Okay.
So
I was just
All right,
kinda
well
curious
then
if
let's
there
just
was
scroll
difference.
through and I'll scroll through it like I'm doing it if you guys were clients and then you could see. So you've seen Stephanie's thing and I didn't go through Stephanie's because I wanted it to be really just natural. So I'm always looking to see kind of what's on there, making sure things are in place, making sure that there's a general age for the roof. You'll sometimes have like a year and sometimes a number. They don't really know. A tile roof is going to last longer, obviously, than the shingles. Sorry, couldn't think of that. A flat roof is going to last even less and has a lot more problems. They said they don't have any significant issues with any of those things, which is great. Always surprising. Notice that I oftentimes have people put yes on there because there's something that has been fixed at some point. I mean, it's like, what? You don't have anything wrong? Not even with the fence? All right. just be careful about that when it's no, right? When things look too good, it's always a little bit tricky. So obviously on here, we're looking through what has the yeses and the nos, and I usually go pretty quick through these now that I've done it so many times. Common fences for sure. Kitchen remodel is not permitted. So it might be a good idea to ask them, was it done to current code, right? Did you guys do it to the code? You definitely want to have that, and that's nice to have in writing. Nice to get to your TC and make sure that they're putting that as part of the foundation. Know that the codes change constantly, so it may not be to today's code. We just have wanted it to have the code that it was at the time. So, and by the way, when we're saying stuff like Liz and I can say updated kitchen, we don't usually say remodel, because remodel kind of implies like a full remodel. That's a lot more pressure. That guy's, it's kind of tricky when you're putting a remodel. There's a lot more to a remodel than just an update. So just be careful for that word. You know how funny I am with all that stuff.
Can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
Can I ask you a question? So on the report, it says that the bathrooms has been remodeled without a permit. And we're talking about the permit. So does it raise an concern that they should have gotten a permit, or is that okay that they didn't get a permit and they went ahead and remodeled the bathrooms?
Well, it's ideal if everyone gets a permit. However, most people don't, and a lot of buyers don't really care. It just kind of depends. Like if they did it with no permit for themselves a couple of years ago, then I'm not really that worried about it. You know, I assume that because they were doing it because they love the house. If they did it to sell the house with no permits, I may be a little more cautious, but although that's also common and some buyers care and some buyers don't care, we sell plenty of stuff. Most things we sell has stuff that's something in there that's not permitted. But you do want to take a finer, closer look because you know that someone hasn't gone through to check on that, right? So if they did that 2 years ago, any problems should have come up. They've been using their kitchen. If they just did it last week, and we don't know if they picked up guys that are, you know, working on the side of the Home Depot to do the work, and it hasn't been tested, you may have more problems that come up. So again, it's more dialogue. Nothing's ever a problem. It's always more dialogue. Sorry, someone's at my door. Hold on one sec, guys.
Hey, Steph, you know how you wrote,
I'm having a meeting, so I can't.
wrote on there that
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
is that, why is that important?
Why did I put crack in the driveway?
Because I see cracks all the time and I never really think of it as a major problem. So I just want to know what,
It's
how do you explain that?
go
I
ahead.
notated it. I was going through notating things I might talk to the client about. So a crack in a driveway could be the indication of settlement issues. If there's a big tree there, that's where the sewer lateral is. So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Patrice.
No, I just wanted to say it doesn't, we need to disclose everything that we see. Stephanie's not an inspector of concrete, right? We're giving my general idea today and Steph's giving her general idea and you guys are. It's not for Stephanie to decide if it's big or little. In fact, that's one of my notes on there on one of the disclosures. It's not your place to say if it's a big crack or a little crack or an important crack or an unimportant crack. It's a crack. You're an agent. It's your job to give a visual declaration and to tell your clients what you see. It's so we always say cracks, and you'll see it on disclosures all the time because Stephanie doesn't know what it is. Right. And she may see what she may see as a small crack, and then later she might see a major problem. So she's just saying cracked, right?
So we probably won't go over everything with the client. There are hot button issues that clients will bring up that bother them. And then there'll be other, but like I've told you before, Duck, about when you go to a showing with clients and you have an opportunity to flex your muscles. I use disclosures as another opportunity to flex my muscles. Like in this case, these clients, mushroom capped sewer lateral clean out was in the front, right in front of the driveway. So like 10 feet from the street. And so even though this house was built in 1990, it was a good time for me to mention, hey, this is exciting. The sewer lateral is right here. There is nothing between here and the street. So that's fabulous news for you for future reference of needing to worry about your sewer. Even though this is young and there's no clay pipes here, there's still tree root intrusion even in PVC pipe. And then I said, and see, there's this crack in the driveway. But cement cracks all the time from ground movement. So I'm not an expert, but my gut tells me that this is just from ground movement, and that's going to happen to a driveway over years. So it's going to happen again. If you don't like it, you can always get pavers if they allow it in the HOA. And then, so I just talk about options, but I just bring it up so I don't cover it up or make it seem like not a big deal. But I'll tell them my opinion. I'll say, I don't see any trees here. Like, there's nothing to indicate that this is a problem in my experience. If it bothers you, we can get it checked out. If it doesn't, it was on the TDS. And so we're just talking about it, like in passing, if that makes sense.
I love that. Yeah. And notice how, yeah, you're not hiding anything. And again, she has a lot of experience, so she's able to say that. If you don't quite know, then you don't quite say what you don't know. But this is part of that, you know, you want to make them feel comfortable, because if you see a crack, they're probably going to see it as well. And yeah, that definitely helps. And again, another question, you see that tree root, then Stephanie may have asked the seller, hey, do you guys have to get the roto-rooter in your kitchen, in your bathroom a lot? You know, have your clients ever had to get their sewer cleaned out? Has their bathroom ever backed up? Did they have root intrusion? That's exactly what that means, right? That means they're having a sewer problem in most cases. So that's what that is. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so is everybody on the same page, by the way? Because I just saw Diana. Diana, do you have the report from?
Yeah, I think I'm at the bottom of, oh, wait, am I muted? No, I'm not muted.
And this is a point to what Zareen was saying. We're all learning that there are things that might concern us, but we have to work in the constraints that we have. If a client has 5 days to do inspections, we have to get them to understand what are the priorities, right? And so I'll often tell clients, we could do a sewer lateral inspection right now, but let me tell you what my experience is. This house is older than 1980, so there's no longer using clay pipes. There's no trees in the front. So does that mean that your sewer lateral is clear? No. But if we have 5 days, do you feel like it needs to be a priority based on these points I'm telling you? And then you can help eliminate the stress on a client. Obviously, it's like fireplaces. If you noticed, you guys, on the TDS, I said there were 3 fireplaces.
Yes,
like,
I saw that.
a fireplace isn't a problem, but it's good to know they're there, because a lot of people want to get fireplace inspections. If someone is in love with fireplaces and they want to know if it's functioning, and then there's other people who will own a fireplace for 15 years and never once light a fire in there. And so they don't want to spend the time, the energy, the stress getting fireplace inspections ahead of time. So it's kind of like, I notate what we need to talk about so we can open the conversation up to what inspections we want to do.
Yeah, and at the beginning, you have to advise everything. You don't know enough to not advise, right? So over time, it gets to be easier. But know that at the beginning, you better make sure they do everything that they know about. And hopefully you guys have that email that I made that I sent over that says all of those kind of things. You know, you have a chimney inspection. I've seen like where a chimney was fine, they weren't going to use it, but the bricks were broken and there were cracks. And there might have been like water coming in, right? So, you know, it's next thing you know, it's $4,000 or $5,000 of brickwork. So just, you know, it's our job to make sure that we're protecting everybody. So, you know, we want to interpret it, but again, it's your job to get them to get the stuff from their inspectors as well. So you guys, I'm on page 8 of Stephanie's 3421 Black Meadow Drive paper. I'm just scrolling through. Here, I'll put us, you guys want to watch my screen?
Was on 6. All right, now I think I'm on page 8.
Okay, let's see. Here, I'm going to share my screen so you can see.
Well, those are all no.
Can you see now?
Mine. Yep. Let me switch over.
The only thing about me sharing is you guys won't really get to see because I move so fast. But I think it'll be nice for you to see me move fast. So notice I'm looking through, I'm like, okay, page 6, explanation exhibit A. Oh, Lord. So I have to, this is the one that has a whole, he has more notes on another page. So I'm scrolling through.
For these, usually I just look at I find the yeses and then I.
Yes, it should be the yeses.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Architectural.
They're all no's and then it's pretty much you just go through it.
And you guys, when we're talking about a tract home that looks perfect, this is a lot easier. You have a custom built home that's on the side of a hill, you better read all the stuff. If they say no and you see that there's a landslide and they said no anyway, they're going to take you to court and go, did you not see that? Well, I did. Did you not read the disclosures? Well, I only looked at the yeses. Okay, how much did you get paid, right? The client paid you? You are a professional. Did you tell them that you were a professional? Did you advise them to get a foundation inspection? Did you tell them about the landslide? Well, no. Why not, right? Isn't that your job? So again, I don't mean to be fearful, but I do think it matters. Like on different houses, there's definitely, you really step it up even more, and you make sure that they're using a level of inspector that you trust. There are some, I've used HomeGuard a lot. If I'm doing a fancy custom house that needs a lot of work, I'm not using HomeGuard. They do a pretty good job for a decent house. If I need them to get really deep, I want to go to a higher level of specialty, so that way they can, I can know that they have a contractor level inspection. So we want to use that as well. Okay, other reports, I'm just scrolling through. Here's where this guy goes into Exhibit A. So they're showing us all the stuff. Again, you can choose if you would like to have any of that stuff, you know, asking questions. Was any of this with permits? There's plenty that it isn't. And again, Zareen asked the question, is that a big deal? I don't know. It's not a big deal to me, but there's certainly going to be some buyers that it is a big deal. And there are certainly some markets that it's can affect value more than others. Right now, nothing's a big deal. When the market goes down, everything's a big deal. Like you live on the road, that's a big deal. You have a problem, you're not with permits. Everything is all of a sudden a really big deal. And the values separation is a wide gap.
They have a Toto toilet. Sorry.
I know, they're so funny about, well, and I guess they're like, that's a really good brand. So I'm assuming they're
the
proud of that,
expensive
right?
Japanese type of brand that can warm up the toilet seat. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah, I like those.
fancy one.
I always make sure to use those when we sell those houses.
Well, it's a really
Not that much fun. For warmth. Okay. Installed, like here we are. Okay, so I'm on family room, right? Can you see my little cursor?
Yes.
Yeah.
So a couple things. So really everything can be an issue and most things are not. Technically, they want a permit for hanging a light fixture. I doubt if they did all of that for hanging a fan. When you hang those lights in there, those can lights, technically those get warm. The insulation has to be separated and away from it. Hopefully you'll have an inspection when someone can look at. If you waive it, imagine, Stephanie, you might decide maybe they should even get it their own inspection. They can't cancel the deal on it, but they can make sure that everything's in good shape for when they own it. So don't think of an inspection as only for negotiation. So if I'm going to see any issues, and I'm not saying that you should, I'm just saying it might be like, oh, I hope that the insulation isn't around that light because that would be a fire danger. Kitchen remodel. Hey, did you do this with permits? Oh, great.
That's why it says installed, not just replaced. Okay.
Sorry, Diana, what was that?
Oh, I was just reading. I was like, wait, didn't it just say that it was just, it said installed. Okay. I was thinking like they just replaced it, but I was like, oh no, it says installed a new one. So they put
I mean, even when they're up there doing those lights, they have to put that attic insulation back, and it just has to be a certain way because those things do get hot. By the way,
Yeah,
I
I
only
know,
know that because I've gone to 1,000 freaking inspections.
I actually had to climb up in my parents' attic to find tracing a wire for its connection for a camera. So yes, I've been up there with all that stuff. It's not fun and it gets very sweaty.
Yes. We don't like that. Okay, backyard remodel, landscaping, lighting, kind of all that same stuff. Again, these are just great things of dialogue to ask. Hey, was this done with permits? Was everything done to code at least? You can ask those kind of questions. So we just kind of get through. Here's his AVID on there. I put something on every slot. So when I first started in this business 14 years ago, the TDS has a little section in there, and we used to like squeeze all the little words in there. And I would have like, you know me, I can be very expressive, let's say. So I'd put a lot of teeny tiny words in that spot. That's what the area standard was for agents. The AVID wasn't used all the time. Then agents started using the AVID, especially in Oakland and Berkeley, where we practice at a higher level. And so once that happened, the industry standard changed, and we need to adapt to the industry standard. Again, this goes back to a lawsuit, right? If you're taking the easy way out, technically you might think that that's fine. But if you're not competing at the same level of other agents, then I would contend that you're not giving the same level of service and you're not doing your job. So I always put something on there. I would assume that there's always something in every room. Ask Liz, it's like scuffs on nail holes, scuffs. There's always something to put. So just be thorough. Can you guys not play in there if you don't mind?
Oh, this is Tom Hart's one. Okay,
so
sorry.
Just be really careful with all of that when you're saying everything is okay. You can if you choose, but I don't like to say okay because that guy is telling me I don't even need to look at something. That's what I'm psychologically thinking. So maybe I'm not even going to do a great job. So I just want you to be careful with that kind of stuff. Also want to be careful with words. He did okay. See, his driveway is cracked, so not big crack, little crack, or any of those things. Square footage advisory, we're starting to see more of those, but not all the time. Here's your tax suite. So the tax suite, what you can see in here sometimes is sometimes the bedroom count is off. Sometimes the square footage count is off. Sometimes the garage count is off. back, I mean, there's plenty of permits, again, that don't match county records all the time. They definitely didn't always keep great records of it. So you can see here's our little flood code X. That'll also be on the natural hazard disclosure, but just nice to see. So it just kind of is what it is.
So can the sale of the, I'm sorry, the sale of the property can be on hold just because, I'll take my question back. Okay, so the buyer finds out that the bathrooms are not with permit and they're like, oh, I want them to go, I want them to have a permit. Like what you said, it was done 2 years ago. Yes, you can understand that there's no problem. But if it's done just for the sake of selling the home, and then there's no permit, what happens if the buyer decides that they want to get a permit from the city?
So for now, right now, they're gonna have a very difficult time in this market getting the seller to do anything, but I've had it in all types of markets. So I've had situations where the buyer was bothered by it and they just totally canceled the deal and say, I don't want to buy this house. I don't feel comfortable with it. I've had many situations where they just don't care and they realize that they trust that the seller was maintaining the house in the way that they saw fit for all these years. And so they trust that that was in good shape and they just buy it as is. I've had situations where they've asked for the seller to take care of it and the seller has gone to the county or whatever city and gotten the permits done. And then they can also make the determination of once it sells and they own it, they can go and get permits done. But there are fees that are associated with it. So,
okay, thank you.
Which is why most people typically don't do it. So that's why, again, the question is good and you have to ask, why didn't you get the permits done? Was it done to code for that period? Did you have a contractor? Like, you can ask those questions and there's really no right or wrong answer. It just depends on some buyers will be bothered and some won't. Just know that it happens a lot. People are thrifty and they don't want to pay the city for every single thing that they do. It doesn't mean that they're trying to be sneaky, but it also could.
I think it's important, Erin, for you to understand that in this market, at least, the sellers don't want to be opened up to any more work or expense than they need to get this house sold. So, like, if you send them to get the permits and something was done wrong, they'll have to correct it. And once they bring the county in there to look at it, the county will make them fix it. So, same with that's why a lot of sellers don't want to fix the dry rot. Because if they happen to open up the wall, cut away some and find there's more behind it, they will be responsible for it. And so, sellers in this market want to do as little as they have to open up any Pandora's boxes. And I'm not saying you shouldn't protect your buyer, but don't set your buyer's expectations up that the sellers are going to want to do any of it. Because they're not.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
You can ask, but you might lose the deal over it. So you need to know.
And you're fine to call the city and ask which permits are there. And by the way, that's something that your buyer should do and not you. I used to do it back in the day, but anything that I tell my buyers that I hear from the county means nothing. And I'm just stuck in the middle of a lawsuit. But if they know who that is and they take track of who told them that at the time, then they could actually argue with the city over something. But if I say I wrote this down and I passed it to my buyer, it doesn't count. So when there's something to deal with the city and you're asking, you can have them ask for the permits. But like Stephanie's saying, you don't want to say like, hey, is that janky shack out there permitted? You're like, what? If they go out there, you could actually be damaging the seller and their sale. And you don't want to be in that lawsuit. Again, it's not my place to judge whether they were right or wrong to get it, but it's not my job to cause extra problems. But just for your buyer to say, hey, can you give me a list of all the permits that are there? I'm thinking of buying this house. That can happen. And if you say, and oh, by the way, if we want to get permits for building an ADU in the back, can you tell me what that would look like, right? Or you can ask those kind of questions. And those kind of things are okay. But you can't ask that, because if they say, oh yeah, that can totally be done, and then they say later like, oh no, I don't know who told you that. And you're like, well, Bill said it on at this time, then you have a communication log, maybe you can get it bent. So, and again, it's just keeping you out of trouble.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm gonna, since we've kind of gone long anyway, I do want to say, I'm gonna go back to pest report a little bit. Remember how I said there's only, and Stephanie just brought pest reports up. There's two things that I never want a seller to fix for my buyers in never just give us credit for. So on most things, I want the money, because on that dry rot, all of that stuff, usually I can negotiate and there's not that much. Sometimes it definitely can be more, and you can kind of tell. The two main things that are incredibly problematic that I've seen like tens of thousands of dollars is a shower. Like when they say there's damage, there's dry rot under or behind a shower, very expensive. It'll only show, they can only quote on what they see, but in most cases, there's a lot more damage than it seems. And they have to rebuild all of that wall, do all of the tile work, and it can literally be tens of thousands of dollars. Very expensive, and it's not something they'd see. And then the other thing, which is on Diana's report that I wondered, is when you have a deck over a living space and they put that membrane coating on it, if you have any tear, you can't see what's underneath that, but of course there's wood underneath. So you don't know that thing is made to hold water, and it does until it doesn't anymore. And it's easy to get a little hole in it or something. So if you ever see where there's damage to a deck that has that, you better make sure that you ask for it to be replaced, because it can be tens of thousands. Decks can be really expensive, and you just don't know what kind of damage, and you can't see what's underneath. So in those two circumstances, you really have to get deep with more information, because I've seen major problems. And that's the only two major things that I see. But in those, I don't want to credit for it, because I know it's going to be a heck of a lot more. So I'll ask for them to get it done, and then after it's open, it's like, oh my gosh, it's $20,000 more work. Maybe my buyer will split it, but at least they had a decision to make, and they had more and enough information to move to the next level, right?
Would the deck though be also considered as part of the HOA thing for the outside of the house, or is that still, because I was trying to skim through I don't know if I saw that or not, if they would end up covering that since there is an HOA.
Oh, not every HOA covers that. And a lot of decks and a lot of roofs are not covered by HOA. So every HOA operates differently. So it just really depends. Did you see that it actually said that it covers decks?
No, I skimmed through it. I was trying to skim through it, but there's a lot to go through with this one with everything. So I'm trying my best.
Yeah. So, and the CCNRs is different. The HOA docs are different. And that, again, I think because we're already at 4:30, we probably will need to do HOA docs and NHD on another report, because those can get very deep. And those are one of those things that people don't think it's a big deal, and they're both a really big deal. Technically, it has nothing to do with your specific house. It's for your area or that community. Mm-hmm. But I've absolutely had deals break from HOA docs, and I've absolutely had deals break from natural hazard disclosure and Megan's Law. So those things are all really, really a big deal, even though there's nothing the seller can do about them, right? It has nothing to do. So it's kind of interesting how that works out. This is all a big deal. So I'm going to keep going through this and sorry, mute. So market conditions advisory, again, this is just really talking about that your seller knows that this is the market and it may change, and that your buyer knows this is the current market and it may change, right? We know right now it's a seller's market. Any moment now that can change. Your buyer can pay up, waive all their stuff, and the market changes tomorrow and they're stuck in that contract. Too bad. They know that we're dealing with what we have. All right, water conserving and carbon monoxide. So we know that it's interesting. I still don't really know what's going on with our water conserving. They're really not making us do any changes so far. I haven't seen them require any of those things. I think there's so much dealing with, but so far I haven't seen this happening. But you can see it does say they're starting to have some of these plumbing changes, but I have not seen this take place yet. Has anyone else? Am I missing anything with Phil?
I don't think so.
I noticed that we have to sign off on that. Like,
I know it's kind of funny, but we aren't changing all of those things. I think people naturally are, but this is one of those disclosures that isn't being used, right? But it does say since 2017 that that's kind of stuff has to happen with single families, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, it's not really happening. Maybe in commercial side, but I'm not seeing that on ours. But every once in a while, I have a client that really reads, and I'm like, oh, it's fine. Now, when we change toilets, I suggest you get a plumbing one that's efficient, but we're not seeing that. Carbon monoxide, we do make sure it happens. There has to be one on every level. Even on a if there's like split level, that's 3, even though it's technically a 2-story home. And then obviously the double strapping of the water heater, and you can get guidelines for those kind of things. And typically you ask for it, but you just assume it's going to be taken care of. But that's what your 5-day walkthrough is, to make sure that any of these things that you ask for really do happen. And that's on you. That's what the 5-day walkthrough is for. You need to make sure that the house is in about the same condition that it was when you wrote an offer, that nothing's changed, that they didn't change out appliances or stoves or dishwashers with cheaper versions. That's really what this is for. And then also to make sure that things like the state requirements have been put into place. And let me tell you, my sellers say they do it all the time and they don't do it. I'm like, oh God. Like, what do you mean? They just told me that it was taken care of. No, it wasn't really. I'm like, oh, great. State, oh my God, the statewide buyer. And I just scrolled through this one real fast. Again, just an advisory, the seller needs to disclose everything that they want to know, and it's the buyer's right and responsibility to go through and find out everything they know about that property. And by the way, it's your job to make sure that they understand that completely. It's their right and their responsibility. They are, this is a lot of money that we're spending, and it tells them all the different ways and the different things that they should look out for. And again, matters affecting property. You may not have to read this day in and day out, but you need to make sure that your clients are paying attention because they are signing off that they know that this is a condition. They can't go and sue a seller later and say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh yeah, you signed that. It's your job to find out. If it bothers you, if you have a neighbor that smokes a cigarette next door, you better go figure that out and go knock on a neighbor's yard. I used to say that all the time. If anything's an issue, you might want to go meet the neighbors on the weekend before you remove your contingencies. Like I would always drop that because you don't know what's going to be an issue for somebody. You just don't. Like they're like, oh my God, that's my ex-wife's ex-boyfriend's friend's son who sabotaged me in college. Oh my God, that's terrible. Go find out about it.
They say somewhere's a good neighborhood. Tell them to come back during rush hour. Tell them to come back at night. Their inspection period, so they can see. Some places feel totally safe during the day, and then you come back at night and you swear you are in a totally different place.
Well, and by the way, that's not our we're not supposed to use that word obviously either, so we can't. So we have to make sure, because people will ask us all the time, what's this neighborhood like? Is it a safe neighborhood? And I say, everyone has their own comfort level. And when we're selling houses in urban places, there's definitely a lot more experiences and everyone has their own. So it's up to you to look at the crime stats, to look at Megan's Law, and to drive over and see what this property looks like at all different hours of the day to make sure that you and your family feel safe and comfortable. And, when you're living in urban areas, there's definitely a higher propensity for crime, right? It's not even necessarily your neighbors. And crime, and I say this too, crime happens in every neighborhood. You can't get away from crime. You can't buy away from crime. You can work on avoiding violent crime, but even still, there's not so much. Just we have to make sure that we're really careful with this because clients ask us things that could get us in trouble all the time. And you have to find a creative way to help your client find that solution. And you need to make sure to stay clear of things because you don't know if someone is, there are people that literally just go out and try and find people to sue because they can make a lot of money just by suing you from being discriminated against. So just be careful with that stuff too.
It's more of like there's going to be things like even if you have a client who's buying in a school, like if they buy in Burton Valley and they don't bother to come by when school's in or out, they have no idea that they could be stuck behind 20 minutes of traffic every single day trying to leave their house. Like these are things that aren't your responsibility, but you can kind of hedge your liability by just telling the client to come back at different times. Say you're buying right by a school, you might want to come by when school's in session. Obviously, COVID's changed things, but there's noise, there's traffic, and you don't want to sell them out of it, but they could be really pissed off like 6 months later when they realize they bought right next to a school and they're always like stuck in crazy traffic trying to get out of their own house, stuff like that.
Totally. And by the way, rekeying, well, I'm getting us back on here, so sorry that I'm jumping over. We're right here on page, well, you guys see me on the screen, this rekeying thing, that's another one that I think can get you into issues. Like if someone, your clients need to know if someone's changed their locks. If something's been a rental for a long time, you don't know how many people have the keys. Those tenants may have them. Anything could happen. So you should see that on either the SPQ or the TDS. It'll say if it's been rekeyed. Right?
It doesn't. I don't think it does.
Is that only in our leases?
Yeah, I don't think it does. But
okay.
You know what? A lot of our home warranties have recently added
the rekeying,
services of up to 6 locks for their $75 or $80 copay.
Okay.
So that's a good way to sell that to them too.
I think this is so important to make sure that you tell your clients that they're getting an old ass key that they don't know how many people has, right? Again, all these things that we say just really help people. That's all we're looking to do. We're not trying to scare people, but wouldn't you like to know how many people have keys to your house?
Yeah.
We're giving out keys left and right to contractors. Things are all over. you just don't, I shouldn't, we're not really giving out keys left and right to everybody, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, people are working in your house. We trust the people and everybody's awesome. The buyer doesn't know anybody. There's tenants. You don't know who the tenant has hired or shared or any of those things with. So just while we're passing through, I think that's neat. And solar panel leases, good Lord creation. Thank God most of my solar panels are owned, but it's a real pain in the neck. Angela just dealt with that this year and actually ended up a deal canceled, not just because of this, but it was driving her crazy. She had someone that signed that they were okay with the solar panel lease. Then they found out how much it really cost. They found out how much the buyout is. It was a lot more than they wanted, and it was a real pain in the neck. When someone's taking over a solar lease, they actually have to qualify for that company separately, and they may end up with a higher interest. That's what happened with Angela's. The people disclosed they had a lower interest rate. Her client was going to have a much higher interest rate. So now that lease, which cost the seller a small amount, was going to cost hundreds of dollars more. And then it became an issue and they could qualify, but not at the payment that they wanted. So you guys really be careful with those solar leases when you see it too, because they are one of those things that will trip you up and make you look like a fool. And again, you just want to make sure your clients know eyes wide open kind of what's happening, and that you can advise them. We're not scaring them. We do want to make sure that they know. You guys got that?
Yep.
So we're starting to see more of all these general disclosures. So this is just like page after page of all kinds of stuff. The one in Alameda has more information. This is all just generic. So we're just going through. Again, I'm going through it because I'm not going to explain everything over to you guys. This is generic stuff. You should have gone through this at least one point. Oakland has one, Measure EE. You can't rent you've got rental regulations. You've got discrimination thing. There's a bunch of stuff for every city. If you guys are going to sell, you need to know and to look through all of these things just to have a general idea. And it's okay if you're doing it. Like, you don't have to become an expert today on 27 houses, but anytime you start showing a client, it's a good idea to find out, again, which is why I'm always sending you guys to do disclosures. It'll educate you as you go, and it's just such valuable information.
Yeah, like Oakland has the sewer lateral requirement. Not all cities have them.
No, it's mostly the stuff on the other side. And it's so funny because Richmond's in Contra Costa County, but it acts like Alameda County as it has its own like that.
Right.
And then Dublin doesn't. Everything, Concord has some energy efficient things that you have to know about. There's a bunch of little different things, and you don't want to look foolish to not know about it. So again, this is another reason to learn these disclosures, is because you're going to learn what each city has, which
Yeah.
is really nice too.
And I find a property that's unincorporated, that changes things all together.
Oh, then you've got the gas shutoff valve and those kind of things, which again is not that expensive, but you definitely have to know about that. So I'm just scrolling through more of this. You guys should look through this on your own and we can ask questions. Here we get to the natural hazard disclosure report. And a lot of times people only look through this page. Important, totally important. But you got to see all of the other ones too. I don't think they're all in this one. The things you want to make sure is that they need to know that the tax rate is in there and all like the little add-ons, the Mello-Roos and all those other assessments. So anytime there's an election, this is how I literally used to say it. Anytime there's an election, everyone votes on, what do they want to pay for extra for the school? And what do they want to pay extra for sidewalks and garbage? And anytime someone votes on something, it gets tacked onto your bill. And so the flat tax is about 1%. We usually assume it to about 1.25. In Oakland and Berkeley, it's kind of like 1.34, 1.5% because they've added so much other stuff on. And don't think you're going to get good schools, roads, or policing. None of that actually happens either, unfortunately. But they do. I don't know what they're spending the money on, something for sure. But every property has their own, and you need to make sure that you know because it goes with the property, and it's only going to increase. They're not cutting back taxes. I'm sure they're going to keep adding more stuff on there. So you want to make sure that that's on there, and then of course the environmental stuff too. So when we talked about, is it an earthquake zone? We see that a lot. I've sold plenty of those houses. Is it in a flood zone? Yes. Walnut Creek, North Walnut Creek has a lot of flood area, which is kind of surprising, but they have that, that creek. It's like, wait, what? That's why it's called Walnut Creek, I guess. Fire areas, that's become really, really popular. We have a lot more problem getting insurance around La Miranda because we're so woodsy. So if you have this beautiful open space, it comes with fire damage. Surprise. Zareen and I were just showing a client and they were worried about a fire in Pleasanton. I was like, wait, what? I'm like, what? There's not even that many trees around there. And it's all freeway. You could get out easily. I'm going to yeah, if we ever have a problem, I'm literally going to be running my children and my creatures because I won't be able to get out in a car. I don't live in a safe area. So just know that all of this stuff is natural and normal, and all of this stuff is a condition to the Bay Area. It just kind of is what it is. They talk about, I don't know if it's on there, the radon gas, by the way. We have a lot of radon gas in our soil here in the Bay Area. Our lifestyle means that it's not a problem. If we lived in basements like they do in the East Coast, you actually have problems with radon gas. It builds up and it's really unsafe for your health. We have radon gas here. I've had clients that have done radon gas tests. It's definitely prevalent. What we're looking at is does it affect us? So when you're doing those radon gas, those mold tests, what they do, I don't know if you guys have seen those before, but they actually test inside of your house in certain locations, and then they test the outside of the house. So again, with radon gas, we know that radon gas is present because it's natural, it's in the soil. So they're comparing, do you have more inside of your house than you would have in the outside? And if you have more, that's when they think it's going to be a problem. Same with mold. Just so you know, as we're thinking about those things, it kind of made me think about that. When you're doing a mold inspection, everybody's got mold in their house. There's mold outside in the air. What they're looking for is, do you have a higher concentration in this particular room than you might have in another part of your house because of those areas? Just wanted to make sure. So when someone wants to do a mold inspection, just so you know, and they say, oh, it's 175 a test. Yeah, but you got to test 4 rooms minimum before you can get to the area to find out, because you're just comparing one against the next. I just wanted to make sure to say that too while I'm thinking about it with all these disclosures.
With the radon thing, my last client brought it up when we were at inspections, and she asked if she should get a radon test. And I never dealt with that before, but luckily the inspector was there. And the reason why he told me she asked that was because they're living in San Jose right now. And I guess he said that in San Jose is a normal thing. A lot of people get that tested there because it's very common there. But in the area that we're at in Concord, it's not very common that people would have that test. So he was there to explain that. He was like, yeah.
That's interesting.
Right, because her friend or neighbor or something talked to her about that, and she came up and she asked, and I didn't know how to answer, but luckily the inspector was there. He was like, yeah, in this area you can, if you want to, you have the option to, but it's not very common that people here would do it. But I know that you're from San Jose and people commonly have it done there, so you.
That's so interesting, because I've heard it was because we live with our windows open and we have such a mild climate that it's just not going to build up. So you may have some of it seep into your house, but that's not that big of an issue. So that's so interesting. And yeah, it's kind of neat with the standards. The drywood termites that usually happened a lot more in San Jose. Now I never used to see it, and now we're starting to see it more. I wonder if they're more attracted to the hot weather, and we're so mild out here that we don't have quite as many problems. Maybe that's why they have to have it, because they're hot and they have to do air conditioner all year long. You know how it is here. It's like we live with our windows open 70% of the time.
Yeah.
So things so interesting. That's kind of funny how that works out. Thanks, Doc. Let's see. Again, same with the earthquake fault zone, by the way, you guys. We're all next to an earthquake fault zone. Surprise. The difference on this report is, are you within a quarter of a mile from one? But by the way, if you're 0.3 miles away, it's not showing on here. But you're still damn close to an earthquake fault line. So just make sure you're aware of all this stuff. Emeryville is all liquefaction. That's all landfill, right? Do you guys know what liquefaction means to us in this area?
No,
So
what is that?
liquefaction means if we had an earthquake, okay, if you're on bedrock and you have an earthquake, you're not moving. If you have clay soil, we're going to do this, right? If you have liquefaction, Jell-O? If have you ever shaken or seen Jell-O being shaken?
Yeah.
That's what liquefaction is when it shakes, the land is it's like liquid. It turns into liquid. So it would do this in an earthquake, and it will do it for a lot longer. So you have more risk. So if you have a liquefaction zone and an earthquake zone, can you imagine that may be important for your clients to know?
Yeah.
So if it's in a natural hazard disclosure, those are on a natural
It will
hazard
be, yes, you'll see. And again, I don't think this one shows it. So, and we'll do more of a detailed natural hazard disclosure class, because I think this is a report people ignore. And I'd like to get deep on that kind of stuff too. And by the way,
Patrice, it's
yeah.
there. It's just not
Oh,
all.
good.
Just,
it is.
it's
Okay.
just the form you
Okay.
fill in, and then 3 or 4 slides ahead is the whole report with all the taxes and everything.
You have a funny voice, by the way. Does everybody hear the funny voice or just me?
Yes, I thought it was just me the whole time, and I was just like, all right, maybe it's
I know.
not me.
So I
It's
also want to go
upstairs.
through on you guys on your natural hazard disclosure. It's so funny because it's better if you get it in a link in an email. Like this is a 131 page packet, as you see. What that means is these aren't links that I could actually go through. A lot of this disclosure has even more. That's part of why Diana has 7,000 pages in her packet, is because the guy actually printed out the earthquake booklet. These links, you're making your client sign that they've received all of those things. If you only give them this piece of paper, they may not see it. It's probably a good idea when you're getting, if you get a natural hazard disclosure separately. We used to do that all the time, and now we have Disclosure IO, so hopefully the agents are doing it. But send them make sure that they know that the link, there are links in there on the natural hazard disclosure that they could and should click on if it's important to them, right? Because they are signing for it. And then so does the preliminary title report. We'll get through that a little bit later too. So here we have another pest report, and I'm just going to go through. Again, just make sure you're looking at like the little graphs and stuff. If your client wants to do a walkthrough later, you know, again, Stephanie's clients had to waive their inspections. It certainly is nice to be able to look through and go, okay, where do you see the issues? I have totally walked through with my clients and looked at every single one of these until they were content that they were okay with taking possession of property. People are spending $1 million. We only give them 10 minutes to look at it. It's like, here you go. They should be able to go back, and sometimes you have to fight for that. I'm not going to go through every single one. But again, section 1 item, just to remind you, already damaged. Section 2 coming up later. And I just want to see if there is any section 3. No. Here are the pictures, always important. And I've seen them mess up on pictures too. Don't be afraid to ask questions and take a look. Look, and again, notice that all of the damage is in the same way. You just kind of have to imagine how water runs. It runs down, and if it stops at this piece of wood because the grain is different, right? So it's running down into the grain, it stops, and this is where it starts to collect. If people don't keep their wood sealed, and Zareen, we just went through that the other day, the client noticed that there wasn't a seal on the crack. You need to tell them when they buy a house, they should keep it done every other year. They should go through with some silicone and some paint and make sure they're touching this up. They'll be a lot happier when it's all said and done, and they won't come back later because half of that is there. But notice it's always the same area. It's like, it's always at the corners, right? It's always at the joints where two things are connecting. It's because that wood is not on there. It's like, oh, corners, corners, corners. And by the way, you guys know how I am. Imagine me as a brand new agent with something to prove. Holy moly. I would go around like an inspector. I'm sure they hated working with me. I found stuff that they didn't even see constantly. So don't be afraid to ask questions that they miss, because they do miss things.
So for photo 18, does that mean that it was actually leaking from from the actual handle? Is that what I'm seeing?
It looks like there might be, let me see if I can zoom in. Oh, that's not the right button. Now you guys know that I cannot actually work a computer. Let's see. It looks like, oh, look, see, it's dripping right there.
Yeah.
And this is nice because you don't always see, although you do see kind of some of a mess, but we see it behind here all the time. And unfortunately, it's so pretty. They're going to have to redo it. And a lot of times these aren't things that people can ask for. It's like, you go change this out anyway. Like, this is an upgrade to the bathroom. If I was my seller, we'd have changed that because they would have gotten credit for an even more improved bathroom. It would have been even nicer. But it's okay that they didn't. It's a pretty house and they did a lot of other stuff. Again, let's go to this last page. I always like kind of want to look through. I'll look at the numbers and then I go back. On those big ones, what is it that I think I could probably shave off, and what is it that I think could be worse? That's what I'm looking for all the time, right? My client can make a determination if these numbers bother them, but it's my job to see, ooh, that $2,800 actually could be a lot worse than that, or that $1,915, that's nothing. That's only if you're going to do that. I saw that piece of wood and you could really scratch out the damage. Put a little Bondo in there and paint over it, no problem. That's not a big deal, right? That's something that you can do. Let's use this to negotiate for value, but let's get a handyman, because really you just can't have damaged wood, but you don't have to replace every beam. It was only a tiny piece on there. A pest inspection company has to give you the highest level of repair. By the way, one other thing is if they're doing like a deck on a house, I mean, like at the beginning, you know how they have those entry decks in Oakland a lot? If there's any bit of dry rot underneath that, the city of Oakland and the pest company or whatever, the permits, that pest company has to give you a bid to replace the entire deck. If it's only one tiny piece, they technically could come under and pull that out and actually just replace the wood underneath it, and it would be a lot less expensive. So by the way, that's something that we'd want to get credit on, and then your buyer can save a lot of money down the future. So that's actually a nice little treat. But just know that, remember, just think of like where they're coming from. These guys are licensed by the state and they have to provide that information to you. So they can't say, hey, you can just get this fixed on your own. But with experience, and you guys can certainly ask me, you'll start to see it. They can save money on a lot of these reports, and it's a great way of them adding equity to their pocket if they can be somewhat handy. But you also need to know, like, holy crap, this could be a lot worse than it seems. So we need to be protected for that too. So that'll be the difference, and we'll go through that more. And again, looking at other trades, 2A and 2B, that means those are going to have to get estimates. So I will go back. Let's see what those are. 2A and 2B. The rain spots are leaking. I'm not too worried about leaking gutters. That happens all the time. They can buy that Flex Seal and put in there like on the little commercials and clean those suckers out. And then I might ask about the eaves, but very likely that could be from the gutter too, just to make sure that there's nothing. It's like, okay. But again, you may have to get a roof inspection, which in this case, we need a new roof, right? Oh no, we don't know.
That is a lot though for section.
Yeah. So Stephanie advised them that we may have issues. Yeah, and so she actually asked for a home warranty. We talked about having a new, so she's actually getting a limited roof rider on the home warranty because she couldn't have inspection contingencies, but she did see there could be this issue. So that way her clients are at least a little more protected, and so is she, right?
So what's a limited roof? What was it? Sorry, I'm
the home warranty company, when you're getting a home warranty.
Okay, so they'll have that so that hopefully they can help them out in the end then with it or something with the roof.
You better make sure you read it when the time comes. But yes, and I think we should do one of those on home warranty too, because I think this will be another nice class to go deep in. But just know that you can add that kind of stuff on there. You can add the spa, you can add the pool equipment. There's a bunch of little extras that you can add on to, and they're very limited. They don't cover everything, but they certainly are helpful along the way, and they could save your clients a lot of money. So if I have a pool, I always ask for a pool home warranty. If I see that there's a roof problem and I'm not going to get it fixed, I may as well ask. It's like $200 more because it's just a nicer way of protecting your clients that doesn't cost a whole lot of money. All right, in case something happens in that first year. And I always tell them something always happens in the first year. So of course you're going to want to have this, even if you're buying it yourself these days. Okay, so we're back to where we were. Here's all the authorization agreements, blah, blah, blah. Property ID. Oh, here's that good old natural hazard disclosure. So you guys, it's 5 o'clock. So I think we might want to save this for a little bit later and go deeper in the, I think we should do one more on the HOA. I think we should do more on the natural hazard disclosure. And then we can probably add preliminary title into one of those. But I do want to show you, can we just have 5 minutes and I just will quickly show you the notes I took on Diana's?
I took a bunch of notes too.
I know, Diana, sorry.
No worries. Maybe me and you can discuss it because I figured this was a good one. I was like, well, maybe I should go for an easier one. I was like, no, let's go for the hard one.
Well, this is helpful for everybody, so I think it's nice. I have pages.
No title in there anyway.
Wait, so this is not hers. Hold on.
No.
Here's Diana's. No, that's, oh my God. I have all these like little windows because of the. Here we
should
go.
be one more over.
Here we go.
The
This one.
There you go.
And notice it's 646 pages. By the way, when I first started this, we had to print out every one, a copy for me and a copy for them. Thank God for DocuSign, right? And by the way, 175 is as far as I've gotten. So I'm going to scroll us up to the top, and we won't go into all of them. And Diana, we could do this a little bit later. I just want to show you certain things. Well, and I want everybody to see, so not just you, but okay. Wait. Okay. So I want to just go to pages. How do I make? Does this get me? What the heck?
Would it be easier if I sent you the actual from?
No, it's fine.
Disclosures.io?
I just am not.
On each subject separately.
Is this my screen that's scrolling? It's like it's doing its own thing. I just don't know how to use a computer properly. Just kidding. Okay, so here I am on page 1. I clicked. Okay.
2, 3.
I didn't know if that would get me to the pages. So on page 16, Sorry guys, okay, here we go. I just wanted to show you kind of what not to do. Oh, here we go. So number one, they said hairline crack. You probably shouldn't say hairline crack. This is what the seller wrote, right? So it's not for you, but again, it's a lesson to use for everybody.
Yeah.
This guy just said small amount of water around base of toilet, but no other issue.
I don't
What?
find that to be true because and he even said that it leaked down to the downstairs one or something like that, I think is what it said. Yeah, see, water leaked into downstairs bathroom. So that means, how is there no other issues? That's why I felt that was wrong too.
Even if that wasn't there, who is he? He literally just told the buyer that there are no other issues, which means if the buyer finds some issue, they could very easily sue this guy. He literally just gave a disclosure on something he's not an expert about. So just make sure in your AVIDs, you never put that kind of language. And I would just, when you're talking with your buyers, I would just say, look, this guy doesn't really know. So he's assuming no other issue, but he just doesn't really know.
Well, he also put that, he didn't know where the 220 volt was. He said there was none available. I'm like, I think your dryer is supposed to hook up to a 220 volt. So, hey.
Well, and again, I mean, they make mistakes. I want you guys to be careful and be careful with your clients. Here's another one. Garage mold abatement done in 2007. Reports attached showing remediation was effective. How does he know it was effective, right? Now, he could say showing findings. And the reason I'm saying this is because you may have, at some point, you will have these kind of things. When you're doing your AVID for your buyer, just make sure you don't say those kind of words. So it just would say, he could just say report attached, right? Showing, what was done, but he shouldn't even say that. Showing remediation is effective. Just, me with language, be really careful. I'm not an attorney, but I watched a lot of TV in my days, and imagine, I can see the judge saying, you're leading, right? You're leading them to a conclusion. What are you talking about?
So they should
Because that's what he's doing.
So he should have just said what instead instead of all of that? Just
reports attached.
Reports attached. Okay. Reports
right?
attached.
See attached report, period. But he's leading us to believe that with a certain way. And granted, like I said, actually the realtor wrote this and he's a listing agent, but you guys have your AVID too that you should be going through. So just be very careful to not say those kind of words, because I have to correct myself. I want to say small crack because I think it's a small crack. Nope, it's a crack. And so that's something we're always going through. You could say some crack. So the rest seems to be just fine. And this is a pretty good kind of a little thing. Yeah. But you just can't diagnose because you're not a professional of that kind of a way. Let's see. And again, I kind of wrote down to talk about the standard practice. Remember, see how everyone's doing the AVID? Just make sure you're as thorough as possible. If there are HOAs, look, I love that he did this, and we put that on ours a lot. This house is in an HOA. There will be rules and restrictions. Buyers should make sure that they're satisfied. Yes, it's your client, but you don't want that liability. What if they didn't read through? Diana's got 646 pages. You think a seller wants to read this? They usually only look at what's in a different colored font. And we've now seen, and we're going to see when we go deeper.
There's 2 HOAs for this complex, which was why there's so many pages for the HOA, because there's 2 of them.
Yeah, which is kind of scary too. Here we are. So in Oakland and a lot of these cities on this side, we have a purchase agreement addendum that actually has teeth to it. So in Richmond and Hercules would be the ones in Contra Costa. Most of them are in Alameda. So it has this on there. By the way, this is as much a part of the contract. You need to send this in. This supersedes anything that your contract says because they have a higher standard of term. Here we are, sewer lateral compliance. Hercules requires sewer lateral inspections and repairs if damaged.
And then what's interesting is they were trying to do a waiver for all that. And I'm like, I would probably not advise my buyer to waive it, but I don't.
Well, you may have to in this market. If it's a seller's market, your client may have to take that on. It would be then up to you to advise them to get the estimate. They need to just pay for it, right? They shouldn't waive it, but the seller's not taking care of it.
Well,
you can't argue with it.
Of course, the buyer would take care of that,
and,
but
And I think in here it just says, if not, then the buyer is going to be responsible for dealing with it later. So technically they can waive it, but if you can have an inspection period, you want to make sure to find out how much that is, because we've seen sewer. I mean, the sewer can be from $1,000 to $15,000, $16,000, $17,000. They're not going to give you a referral if you screw them this way. Let me just make that clear. It's always about protecting them. So just make sure for that. Again, here's those fixtures. It's like, oh, buyers are responsible. I'm like, I don't even know what we have to do, but No one's doing anything yet.
Well, what's hilarious is they're saying buyer's responsible for the pool, but it's a common area. So how is the buyer responsible for the pool?
They
Is what
just
I was
mean that
kinda
they're
curious.
not
This is a set
responsible.
form.
Ah,
Diana,
okay.
it's a set form though, because they're not, HOA, if you're in an HOA building, you're usually
Yeah.
not responsible for the sewer lateral either. That's on there too. So
Okay. Well, that maybe is why
In
they have an
some
email
cases,
attached
right,
separately
if
for that.
if it's a kind of building where they share the roof and the walls and all that, rarely are they responsible for the sewer lateral.
Well, and
if
again, you
it's
do have
like-
to check because I've seen it
Yes.
where you have your own sewer and you're responsible for that one. And I've seen where it's all connected on one. So it kind of depends. This is the funnest form ever because nobody knows anything on this form. I don't even know why they have that form, but I always make a joke about it too. I'm like, oh, like of all this stuff, there's only like 2 things that are obvious. You're like, okay. The rest are like, I don't even know. I don't even know why they have this. It's such a stupid form. But again, they don't ask my opinion on some of these things. So there's our disclosure regarding agency, which we went over on the purchase contract, which hopefully you guys saw that.
Yep.
Listing agreement, coronavirus, that's all fun and new. Awesome. More forms. We're not just going to go through specifically. You guys should definitely know this, but that isn't specific to disclosure. And what was the next thing? 63 is our page. Okay, I'm scrolling to 63. Let's see if we're there. Oh, close.
There you go.
Okay.
64.
Again, here, I just wanted to make sure that you know your clients are signing off for all of this stuff. This guy did put this little form that's in there, but just know that that comes on your natural hazard disclosure. Like that's a bagillion pages just with this kind of stuff. Is it important? I don't know. Like if someone just moved here and they're worried about earthquakes, it certainly may be important. And I think I've told you guys, I have the client who like literally wrote the earthquake book on earthquake safety. They are only willing to live in a very small area that covers, that fits their needs because they want to be as far away from earthquakes as possible. So for them, it, you know, that kind of thing is important. And then I have sold to some other engineer and they literally said that like he's going to have the rock is going to be at their house any moment now. And an underground stream is going to wash their house away and they're going to be living with dinosaurs at any moment. That's literally what I thought of at the time. Okay, let's see. 123 is what I'm looking for next, you guys. I've got 2 more things to just click on and then we'll stop this. 123. Oh, this was the one part that I said is the issue. So this looks like, and I don't know because I haven't been to this house, but this looks like one of those decks that
in the garage.
outside that is probably over a garage. Is that the case?
I think that's the floor that's in the garage from where they were maybe did their abatement for the mold. That's the only thing I could think of because it's supposed to be in the garage. Because I think
Is there a deck there?
No. I think the deck. I'm not for sure where the deck is. But
Does it have this over the deck? Because these look like patio chairs.
It might be. I'm not for sure.
Let's see. So I'll scroll in again. My point is with this is if that's that material, that looks to me like that decking material that they put over a deck. So just, this would be something that it's so easy, like, oh, it's just some staining, no big deal, or excessive wear. This is one of those things that could cost your buyer tens of thousands of dollars and could make them very unhappy with you if that's really worn. So if you saw something like that where there's wear on those kind of decks, just be really, really careful about that because that's one of those sneaky ones. And then the last one, I'm just going to
try to fix that, or is that something you try to have credit for the buyer to fix later?
That's that one case that I'd rather the seller fix it. It's going to be very difficult in this market. You just have to make sure you're advising your client that there could be a lot of issues that come up a little bit later. And then the last thing is I just want to show you on these books. This is the preliminary title report. And again, we can get deeper on this when we do our next disclosure class. But you need to know that these guys are links in here. So to all kinds of fun stuff. So just make sure that your client knows. And Steph had some issues with this a couple of years ago, or I think a year ago. There's all these little maps. And your client just needs to know, like when you're figuring this out, it's just additional information that they are signing for. And you are responsible to make sure that they are aware of and that they have the right. Oh, shoot. Sorry that I keep clicking on the wrong button. So you just want to make sure to know that anything that's blue is actually a link.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of figured. I thought there were links too to be able to click on, but I was like, I got to go through all these pages.
So you just have to make a note to tell your client, hey, make sure you click on those links, right?
Okay.
Because we just don't do disclosure in the same way that we did before, and you just don't know what's in there unless you know what's in there, right? We don't know what we don't know. Was this helpful today, you guys?
Yes, very much. Thank you so much. This is really amazing. A lot
So-
of information.
It's a lot, right? And that's the whole thing, you guys. We just have to keep absorbing more and more and just kind of get deeper and deeper. So I think we'll go deeper in the natural hazard disclosure, the home warranty, and the prelim. Did I miss anything on those? Because I think we covered these fairly well.
No, I think this is very nice that I can go back and read myself and better understand. Now I have a better understanding of
Oh, good.
each report. Yeah,
And
thank
by the
you.
way, let me say this too. The pest inspection, it comes with bids. They're licensed by the state, so they give you estimates. The home inspection is not. So they
Okay.
will say the immediate items at the beginning, but you really want to go through and get deep on those because you don't know what, you have to get estimates on those if there's anything new. They cannot give an estimate. That's just not allowed. The roof also is going to give an estimate, or it's going to tell you if it's not there. So we can talk about that kind of stuff a little bit later too. But we didn't go through one of those, so maybe that'll be on there. So let's do part 2 of that another time because this was a super long meeting, and thank you guys for participating.
Well, no, thank you so much for taking the time to explain it to us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Put you guys back on.
Alrighty.
Hear me?
Screen.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Alrighty.
Oh, I was just gonna say one interesting thing that you guys just might want to know, just for information's sake. So the contracts, so you guys were looking at the disclosures that I used this week to write my offer with no contingencies. Well, they had me waive everything, and I don't even have a preliminary title report. So the irony of that is you can't ask someone to waive a right to something that you don't provide. So we basically could pull out tomorrow when we get the preliminary title report, in theory, because they didn't give it to us ahead of time. So these agents will pressure you, but just keep in mind that if you haven't been given something, your clients can't waive their right to it. It's not available. So they actually, you get 3 days to review any new information. Now, and they gave us the disclosures as a package, and it's not in there. So I've just been laughing for days at how much pressure it was to remove all these things. He insisted on it. And really, he didn't protect his clients at all. He should have gotten that report. But back out. But you know, it's just funny how and it's every little thing. Like if they said, "Oh, we have a report for this in the disclosures," but didn't give it to you, that's not delivering the information. So it's just interesting to be aware.
Yeah, I was hoping Angela would call in. She recently had that. She had an agent that was pressuring her to close. And then right before they were signing, and she saw an invoice for a sewer lateral. I think it was in Richmond. And she's like, hey, I never saw the sewer lateral. Or she called in and then she found out that they were like, oh, well, we couldn't do it because it was rusted closed, so we couldn't get in there. Well, I tell you, if the top is rusted closed, I'm no sewer lateral inspector, but if even the part that is always functioning is not functioning, I'm guessing that the gross part is probably not doing any better, right? So it was a huge deal, and this guy was totally pressuring her, and he didn't. Now, I wish she went, because she's good about, again, like our quote this morning, getting information. So she actually called the company and all of that other stuff. I wish she would have called him first, because then she had to say, well, I saw this, and it ended up working out fine. But you want to use that power to say, wait a minute, you didn't give me something, right? I mean, this is all a negotiation opportunity. Dude, you're pressuring us to close, and I just found out this new information. Now, she did use some of that to negotiate. She would have been in a better position if she used making him feel guilty about it for a little bit longer, right? Because that is something. It's your job to do your best for your client. And she didn't know that information. That was definitely new. And she was able to get a credit, but he was like writing her. And she gets to change the power around a little bit when he doesn't disclose something. Because he reopened that contingency, like Stephanie said, that's new discovery. And of course it was an accident, but it doesn't really matter. Your buyer has the right to know everything about that property, and they have the right to make their best decision. Stephanie's clients waived all of their information because they gave us the information on a silver platter. If we find out that they withheld information, it changes the contract, right? They're breaching that contract a little bit with us. And so now your clients do, I mean, again, I'm no attorney. If we went to court, I would assume that your clients could find an attorney that would say, hold on. Yeah, we did take it as is based on what you told me, but I didn't know you were withholding stuff. I assumed that you told me everything I needed to know. Everything is a material fact if the buyer thinks it is. A material fact is anything that changes the value for the buyer. So anything that has to do with money is a material fact.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I was gonna say, can you hear me? I was just gonna say that you guys always say, we don't want to remove our contingencies as much as we possibly can. And we do it if we have to in this market to get our offer accepted. But there's also a lot of things to take into consideration. Like I felt a lot more comfortable doing it this time than other times because the house is in a development. It was built in the 1990s. It was owned by one owner. So it's like one owner knows what's gone wrong in that house and they're their watch or they're lying. Unless it was something under the scenes. But they can't say, oh, we never had a roof leak when they're the only ones who owned it. So there's like things that you can do to help mitigate the risk when you're going to remove all your contingencies by investigating what you're working with. Are you working with a house that has the same floor plan in every one of the houses? Can you is it new, is it less than 30 years old? That's a lot different than a 1900s house. This one's on a slab foundation. If you don't see any cracking and you don't feel any sloping in the floor, then there's probably nothing going on underneath because it can't. There is no underneath. So it's like certain things like that are.
Well, and they spend a lot of money. Like Stephanie's also selling like one of the most upgraded houses in the neighborhood. It's unlikely someone that just built a $50,000 outdoor kitchen, right, is going to skip out on leave. They're not going to leave a plumbing leak that costs $200, right? If we're talking about when the market was going downtown Julie Brown and like the values were dropping in the foreclosure, 10 years ago or whatever, those houses, well, of course we were nervous. People couldn't afford to maintain them. So that you're going to be a lot more worried about. And of course, you're not removing your contingencies when you could tell a house hasn't been maintained well versus a house that someone went over the top, right? I mean, you have to use your judgment and you have to let the buyers use their judgment as well. We still legally have to tell them, but yeah, Stephanie's right. This one was easier to remove contingencies because of the circumstances. And by the way, the only way to get to that knowledge about when that is to read a lot of freaking reports and see a lot of freaking houses because you start to get that pattern, right? So for a long time, you guys are going to advise everything because you don't have enough data to help you to feel comfortable to allow someone to take that risk on their own. Does that make sense? That's our job, is protecting people. Showing the love. Okay, well, if anyone is still with us, I'm impressed. But I think it went by pretty quickly, right? I mean, there's definitely a lot in there, and this is so freaking important.
Yes,
And, this is our value as an agent. We get paid really well by our clients. There's good compensation in here. And the reason is because we have to be experts at 1,000 things, and this is just a tip of the iceberg.
Thank you so much for your help and input and explanation.
Yeah, I grew up working in the Oakland, Berkeley market, so I've been having to read disclosures since day one. And again, I worked through that really yucky market where people were hiding stuff. I mean, I remember an agent in my office. I don't know if she's still doing business now, but she worked for a bank-owned company, and they literally were hiding things. They were hiding stains on the walls. They were having a repaint, and banks didn't have to disclose in the same way. So I grew up in a market where I didn't trust anybody. I just always assumed the worst because I was watching that literally happening where banks were not giving disclosure and they were actually hiding things. So we had to always do the highest level of care is to make sure. So I was like a little investigator fighting for my clients because I didn't want anyone to get burned. Again, in this kind of market, it's different when everybody has money. It's a lot easier, but we need to always perform at the highest level. So thanks, you guys. Thank you for making today work.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries, thank you. But I definitely would love to go over the whole thing a bit more so I have a better understanding so that when I do have a client, I'm able to advise them correctly.
Yeah, no, we'll do more. I think everybody can gain more value, and we'll just keep doing these little things and we'll keep recording it so that everybody can learn because we'll learn that much faster.
Recording also, if we still get a copy of the recording, because I'd like to go back over it too.
Oh yeah, I'll have it too.
My brain derped out and missed.
I'll put it on our YouTube and send it to you. And Duck, what were you going to say too?
I remember just last year, you don't get these big packets and then they have you sign off and stuff. Last year, the houses I sold, there weren't you barely get anything.
Yeah, I mean, this again, the standard changes, right? You start to have expectations and the level of agent. So when you're working in Oakland and Berkeley, that's the highest level of practice that I've seen. The farther east you go out, the agents don't do those kind of things. It's just not that big of a deal. In Louisiana, oh my Lord, I mean, they don't even do inspections some of the time. People are just like, I'll just fix it if it's messed up. But our price points are so high that it's a really expensive. I mean, a foundation is $100,000. That's as much as a house in some other areas. You know, you can really, your clients can get into some serious financial problems if we don't guide them properly. So it really matters.
Right.
It's super important. And again, by the way, we talk all the time about selling our value. Do you think that people, agents who do this like we're doing, do you think we're a better agent than anybody else? The more of this kind of stuff that we do, the more confident that you can be to be like, good luck with Bob out there. That guy doesn't even care, right? You know, and you just even having that, you can't say that all the time, but you could show that with your actions and people will appreciate it. And if you go over this, when you got to use this to close. I know Angela's done this to close. She had this guy who was working with a whole bunch of agents. She sent him a disclosure summary like this, and the guy ditched the other agent. And she sold him a house last year because no one had gone through that level before, right? If you can show that you're knowledgeable, we're always just trying to set ourselves apart from everybody else, you know? Which, by the way, reminds me, I just had my coaching with my coach this morning, and he's like, don't let this opportunity get you by. Most agents are going to call this the holidays, DAZE, right? They just kind of coast through and don't do any business. Every one of you could sell a couple houses at the end of the year if you really push. I mean, maybe it doesn't happen, but just know that your conversion should be at a higher rate when you're doing it well, because you're not going to have as much competition because most agents are lazy. So just take advantage of that opportunity too, you guys. And thank you for being who you are.
And thank you.
Thank you, Patrice.
Thank you so much.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
So I can't wait to coach with you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you, there. Yes, looking
goodbye.
forward to it.
Bye, everybody. And we'll resume this
Bye.
later. Thanks again.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye.